Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put
not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to the Do Dissidents podcast. My name is Keaton Weiss, back here, of course, with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
I am back behind the host mic for today, and then we are actually going to be off on Thursday morning because Russ, as you can see, is away from his usual setup. He is up visiting a friend in New Hampshire. And I'm still on a modified leave, so we figure, hey, Russ put in a really, really hard week doing this all himself, and he's away, and it's his birthday, and I could use a little more R&R before going into this full-time. So Thursday morning, we're going to be off, but here we are today, just the two of us, the old band, back together.
Back together again, the way it was meant to be.
The way it was meant to be. That's right.
Now I can fuck off and do my Attack of the Clones video.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And why does he have two lightsabers in that scene?
I know. Now you get your life back after this. You get your life back, right? That's fun.
All right, I'm gonna show you guys because this will be fun for you. All right, so my friend that I'm staying with, we're friends for 40 years. We're friends since high school. We met when I was 15, and his father was very much a character. He grew up on the Lower East Side, and like the neighborhood that they actually shot the scenes for the young Vito Corleone in Godfather 2, that's actually where he grew up. He literally grew up in a place where the mob guys literally gave you coal for Christmas at the holidays. Like he literally had mob guys giving him coal in a stocking. He developed a kind of fetish for British classic style and the Tudor style. So I'm just gonna so now he moved up here. He brought all of these antiques, like grand furniture. So I'm just gonna show you very quickly what I'm surrounded by.
Oh wow, very cool.
Now that across from me, that is supposedly original swords from Cecil B. DeMille's film, The Crusades. I think it's from those swords.
Wow.
So yeah, the whole house is like this. Like the room I'm staying in is like that. And that's very much like the house he grew up in. It's very much like that.
Wild stuff. Very wild stuff. Well, that's cool. You're going to have a fun fun week. If you notice, folks, we have a slightly different look to the show today. You might see, if you're watching, the Rumble Studio in the upper left-hand corner. We are playing around with Rumble Studio today, so we want to thank our friends at Rumble for setting us up with this. It's pretty cool. And we are going to, for the first time ever, a little bit later in the show, try and for the first time move some product for our friends at Rumble. That's right. We're going to give this a shot. We're going to give this a shot, try and support our friends at Rumble and help them help us support ourselves a little bit. You know, now I have a third mouth to feed, so we're going to have to move some coffee and some Rumble apps and things like that. So we are going to test that out a little while, and we're going to make it fun, and we're going to make it interactive eventually. And you'll see what we mean by that. But a little bit of a different interface, a little bit of a different look to the show. So far, no super chats for Russell's birthday, which is interesting. I got to say, I'm a little bit surprised by that.
I'm a little verklempt.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there's a different interface on our back end here for how we display these. So it'd be nice if, as a test, you know, somebody maybe wants to wish Russell happy birthday for a couple $. You know, I mean, just
sure.
if you want, you know.
I really want for this birthday. I really want one of the hookers with teeth.
Yeah, right.
That'll be a new experience for me. I'm hoping to finally get that at 55.
Okay. Nice. Yeah.
I'm up in New Hampshire. I understand I have to go to Boston for that.
Right.
Yeah, you can't really get that locally, but we have a car here, so.
Okay. Interesting. I just want to see if this is working because it's supposed to display everything on our back end on the donations. So I see we did get one super chat here from Glenn DeVries. But why is that not showing up on our Rumble Studio back end?
I don't see that there.
Yeah, that would be fucked up if that's not happening. That would be a big problem. Okay, let's see here. So far we're just getting Rumble rants. All right, we got to see what's going on there because that's not good. Believe me, not good. If they're not coming through, they're supposed to come through. That was the one feature I could not test when I did this before. Was the super chat feature. I tested everything else, but I had to run this as an unlisted thing. So we will see how we get that done. Yes, the Rumble rants are coming through. but the super chats are not coming through. That's a big problem. It's a big problem. But don't worry, I will find them here on the YouTube side, and I'll try and read everything that we get. But yeah, that is definitely not.
Oh,
good.
you mean they're happening, but you can't see them?
Yeah, they're supposed to show. They told us that everything would show up. They told us everything would show up here on this sidebar, and they are not. So that's a problem. That's
Rumble!
Yeah. That's a huge problem. Yeah. Not good. Believe me, not good. But yeah, we are going to get started here. I will, let's see. We're going to try and display this here. This should work. There we go. Yeah, there we go. That shows up here. Keaton, after the trauma of not having you on these past couple of weeks, I'm demanding you get a vasectomy. If you don't, I'm sneaking into your bedroom at night with garden shears. Well, you know, I got to tell you, His Highness.
You're gonna drive this guy to self-deletion if you tell him.
Well, no. What?
That you're not on Sunday.
Oh, well, I am not on Sunday's show, but that wasn't what I was going to say. What I was going to say was actually that I do not have to get a vasectomy because my wife had a C-section. So what happens, folks, when a woman gets a C-section is they give her the option while they have her opened up to get her tubes tied. And so Amanda opted for that, which saves me the trouble of getting a vasectomy. And so how do you like that? How do you like that, folks?
All right,
Keaton,
you can still knock up the future babysitter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Not that that'll be an issue, but I will no longer have to worry about getting the vasectomy. All righty, folks. So we are going to move along here. I don't know why these super chats are not showing up. That was a feature that is supposed to be working, and they promised us that it was. So that is, believe me, not good. Not good at all.
Are you telling me that Silicon Tech people bullshitted us?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Are you telling me that?
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have to figure out something here. But thank you guys all for these super chats. I am not able to see them. I'm only able to see Rumble Rants in here. That's very, very bad. That's really bad. All right.
Hang on. So how are you seeing them?
I have my
like
YouTube
the
app
back
open.
end in YouTube?
No, I just have my YouTube app open on my phone, actually. In fact, that's a good idea. Let me get my YouTube Studio app open so I can go hopefully back and forth and see that. That's a really good idea. Good call. Good call. And I'm going to have to call Rumble up and tell them that.
I completely stumbled into that good call, so.
Well, that...
I'll take it.
It is a good call, though, because I should have them back here. I haven't used this in a very long time, but let's see what I can do here. Top chat, fan funding. Okay, so now I believe. All right, I don't need to see the AI summary. I really don't need to. I don't need to know from YouTube AI what the chat is talking about. I really don't need to see that.
The millennials are better than the Xers, but what I need here is a Zer.
All right.
Got any Zers watching? We need a Zer.
No. Russell saved the day. Okay, so Russell saved the day with his suggestion. So now I can see super chats. So I will be reading all super chats. Does not look like I can display super chats today, but I will read them. So thank you very much, and we will get Rumble on the phone after this because one of the big promises of this feature is that all of the super chats and donations from every platform come through. So that's what I was told. And Rumble, we still love you, but we need that to work. That's extremely important because we can't have the YouTube people not have their stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Otherwise we're not going to use the studio until they figure their shit out.
Right, exactly. We can't have it like this if that does not work as advertised. But you know,
it's almost like Silicon Valley is not trustworthy, and you don't want to spread that perception.
No, you don't.
Right now, it has such a gold star, squeaky clean, cannot tell a lie kind of a perception in the public mind.
I know.
You don't want word to get out that you weren't completely honest about the capacity of your new doodad.
I mean, I would imagine this is not a feature of dishonesty. I think this is just a glitch, which Rumble is known for because it's a work in progress. So we're cool, but I will get in touch with them after.
I had a guy I was being charming to, like I am, in the comment section the other day, and he couldn't respond to my comment, and he thought like I cut him off. So
Right.
and you know, like I don't play that. I don't play that. In our pathetic age, that's the equivalent of ducking a duel, of ducking out on a duel. I don't do that. That's dishonorable.
No. That's
If I'm gonna trash talk you, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to trash talk back.
That's right. Fair is fair, correct?
Fair is fair.
All righty.
He really redeemed himself by quoting Annie Hall, though. So
there you go. Nice.
That was free. We're getting coffee and cronuts next week.
That's right. Yeah, there you go. All right, folks. So yes, we will read super chats. I can't display them today, but I will read them. I'll read a few right now. Glenn DeVries for $5 on YouTube. Good to see DD's more tech savvy, entertaining, funny, and best looking host is back. Well, you spoke too soon, my friend. Also, Phantom Menace is the best Star Wars film, hands down. Thanks, Glenn DeVries. Arcana Soul for $5. Keaton said it so fast I wasn't sure I heard it. Happy birthday, Russ, from Arcana Soul. Kuznetsky Bassane for $9.99. Happy birthday, Russ. Cool Blue for $9.99. Happy birthday on August 7th. Russell Kenman, happy birthday, Russ.
Cool Blue, I'm very disappointed. You didn't attach an actuarial chart about mortality and disease to that.
Right, exactly. Yes, just the happy birthday balloon and a cake. Kenman, thanks for the $2.79. Says happy birthday, Russ. So does BB Baby. Congrats, Papa Keaton. Thank you for the $5, BB Baby. Dustin Price, happy birthday. Please read loud and slow for the older people. Happy birthday from Dustin Price. And Dwayne Vogel wishes Russ a happy birthday for $2.
Thank you, Dwayne.
BB Baby wishes Russ a happy birthday for $5. And Barry91 for $10 says, cool to know we share a birthday, Russ. Congrats on the baby, Keaton. Thank you.
Yeah,
you guys
it's
are
your
the
birthday
best.
tomorrow,
Cackle. Happy
wow.
birthday, Barry91. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. All right. Cool. All right. So at least this is working. All right. I feel a little bit better that we got that up and running, at least in a modified sense for the day. All right. Let's get a show going, shall we? All right, folks. So I'm back. And, we consider this a news and politics show with some comedy thrown in every once in a while. Well, this is a segment that you could file very squarely under the comedy section of the show. So we're going to take a trip back in time, everybody. A trip back in time to 2014, which was the last year of our innocence for many of us. It was the year before the Bernie campaign. It was the year before our journey to being red-pilled began. 2014, simpler times. So here's a NBC News report from New York City. CBS News report from New York City, circa 2014, about a mysterious finding in Central Park. Let's take a look, see what this is about.
In a popular section of Central Park, an unusual crime scene.
We were about over here.
Florence Slatkin says she was walking her dog this morning when she saw something furry underneath the bushes. Police say the 3-foot-long black bear cub had stab and slash wounds and appears to have been dumped there. Adding to the mystery, Slatkin says the baby bear was lying on top of this bicycle, which police confiscated as evidence.
The bicycle was under the bushes. Part of the bicycle was sticking out, and that's what we saw. And then when we looked closer, we could see something on the back wheel, just laying on the back wheel.
The spot where the bear was found is not in a secluded part of Central Park. It's right near West Drive, where thousands run and bike every day.
It's horrible. It's very bizarre.
To think that somebody with criminal intents would do such a thing right here in our backyard is disturbing.
The Department of Environmental Conservation carefully removed the bear and wrapped it in a tarp. Investigators say the necropsy, which is an autopsy for an animal, will be done in Albany.
It's very strange to find in Central Park.
A strange and upsetting crime. In Central Park, Matt Kozar, CBS 2.
Okay, so
screw that bear.
So the good news of this, folks, is that it was not an act of animal cruelty. It was not an upsetting crime. The bear was not killed out of malice by a human being. But that mystery went unsolved for the longest time until now. Let's figure out what happened to this bear. How did this bear end up in Central Park? The mystery solved 10 years later. Let's hear from Robert F. Kennedy Jr. how this bear ended up in the park.
In a group of people falconing up in Goshen, New York, up in the Hudson Valley. And I was supposed to meet them there at like maybe 8 or 9. I was driving up maybe, really early, like 7. And that woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it, a young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to.
All right, I'm sorry, man. Okay. Part of the funniest thing to me about this is Roseanne dressed like a rich wasp, just taking all this in like a matron. There's this very famous scene in the Bob Dylan documentary where these very rich people are able to get access to him. I think they might have been politicians. They're introducing their young son to him. And then Tim Robbins satirized that scene in Bob Roberts, where he took a lot of scenes from that documentary. She's giving very strong vibes of the rich people in both of those movies, of just hearing this crazy story and having no idea what to say. I didn't even realize it was Roseanne because the whole look and demeanor, like the only thing missing are white gloves here.
Let's hear the story get good.
Over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. And you can do that in New York State. You can get a bear tag for a roadkill bear. And so then we went hawking, and I had the bear in my car. And then we had a really good day, and we went late. We were catching a lot of game, and the people really loved it, so we stayed late. And instead of going back to my home in Westchester, I had to go right to the city because there was a dinner at Peter Luger's Steakhouse. And at the end of the dinner, it went late, and I realized I couldn't go home. I had to go to the airport, and the bear was in my car.
Okay, we're about halfway through. Okay, the level of crazy it takes to see a bear that's been hit on the side of the road and think, I have a permit for roadkill bear. I get a bear tag. I'm gonna take this bear home and skin it and put it in a refrigerator so I can eat it. That's a level of insanity that eludes most people right off the bat. Second, if you were so crazy as to pick up roadkill off of the highway and put it in your car so you could take it home and eat it, why would you not go right home? You're going to keep a dead bear.
That's another part of this story I don't understand, because the meat is spoiling.
Of course, you're gonna go out and do shit all day with a fucking rotting bear carcass in the back of your car.
And the smell that you're going to get from that.
Isn't it gonna stink by the time you get back in the car? You go into the city, you go to dinner at Peter Luger Steakhouse, and then the plan is, at the end of the night, I'll drive this bear carcass home, and I'll cut it up and put it in the freezer. Aren't you afraid of it spoiling? You go through the whole day with a dead bear in the back of your car? I mean, that's amazing.
Okay,
that's amazing.
I
hope you didn't get a valet parking at Peter Luger, because they offer that. Imagine you give the key to the valet, you get in, there's a fucking rotting bear in the backseat of the car.
Okay. Also, as a man, there's this funny etiquette that if like a guy asks you to lift something heavy, you almost can't demur, right? Or you're not like a guy,
right?
So the guys that he got to help him with this, I would pay really good money to see the reaction when he proposed this to them. As a guy, you can't say no.
Yeah.
But are we really picking up a fucking dead bear from the highway and putting it in your car?
It's just unbelievable. It is extraordinary. He's not done. Okay, so
that is what they call toxic masculinity right there.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, so now we know how the bear got from the road to the car, but we still don't know how it got to Central Park. So now we're going to find out. He ran out of time. Dinner ran late at Peter Luger, and he's got to get to the airport. So what's he going to do with his bear?
I'll leave the bear in the car, because that would have been So then I thought, at that time, this was a little bit of the redneck in me. There'd been a series of bicycle accidents in New York. They had just put in the bike lanes, and saw a couple of people had gotten killed, and it was every day, and people had gotten badly injured. Every day it was in the press. And so I thought, I wasn't drinking, of course, but people were drinking with me who thought this was a good idea.
I'm sure you weren't drinking at all. No, I'm sure you were of totally lucid mind when you decided to dump a bear carcass in the middle of Central Park.
I had already blown 6 loads into the babysitter, so I was sobered up by then.
Yeah, right. It was out of my system.
And I said, I had an old bike in my car that somebody had asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was like, it was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper. And I turned on the TV, and there was like a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars. There were helicopters flying over it. And I was like, oh my God. What did I do? And then there was some people on TV in Tyvek suits with gloves on lifting up the bike, and they were saying they're going to take this up to Albany to get a fingerprinted. Uh-oh. And I was worried because my prints were all over that bike. Luckily, the story.
Roseanne is questioning her life choices right now.
Yes.
And it stayed dead for a decade, and the New Yorker somehow found out about it, and they're going to do a big article on me, and that's one of the articles. So they asked me, the fact checker said, it's going to be a bad story.
I mean, that is fucking crazy on a level. I mean, how crazy is that?
How is this guy polling only 1%? I don't get it.
Listen, fellas, I'm sorry. I know we're doing good at falconing here, but I gotta go because I have a bear carcass in the back of my car, and I gotta take it home to the refrigerator so I can skin it and so I can eat it.
Wow. What the fuck would you compel you to do? Who would be? Listen, I grew up in the Hudson Valley. This is where the story took place. I know, a lot of hunters and stuff. I would never hunt myself. I can never shoot a deer. It's just my composition. But I know a lot of hunters who, know how to skin an animal and preserve the meat and stuff. I've never heard a single person, and I know quite a few people who hunt for sport. I've never heard a single one of those people, when they pass a dead deer on the side of the road, think, hey, I know, let's get that in the back of the car, take it home, skin it.
Well, because also you don't know how long it's laying there.
Well, he claims that he saw a woman hit it, which who the fuck knows? That seems very unlikely. Very unlikely. Yeah.
Yes.
But the article he's referring to here, what does Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually want? And embedded in that article, they do write about this, and they interview him. It says, when I asked Kennedy about the incident, he said, quote, maybe that's where I got my brain worm. That's at the bottom of that first paragraph there. So he obviously recited the story. We don't have to read that, but that is what he was referring to. So New Yorker Magazine did a profile on him. They did an interview, and they brought it up. So he figured, let me get out in front of this a little bit by telling this as a funny story, which is not a bad idea at this point. But that is fucking insane.
But there's just no way to dress that up as anything other than crazy.
No, especially when a lot of his thing is like public health, like he presents himself as this maverick who really knows about public health. And there's a picture. I don't even want to show this. I don't even know if we're allowed to show this on YouTube, like graphic pictures of dead animals. But one of the pictures in the New Yorker piece is him in the back of the car putting his hand in the dead bear's mouth, like actually making the dead bear bite him on the hand. Like, I'm sorry, that is fucking nuts. That is nutbaggery right there.
Well,
that is fucking crazy.
Well, look, the more time goes on, the more of a victory lap I think we can take. Because back when everyone was hoping to crown him as the new post-Bernie Messiah, we took a hard look at him and said, this guy's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And time has done nothing to dispel that notion. I would say it only gets reinforced. It's
Yes.
sad. It's sad. Hey, man, we gave him props on that first speech he gave when he started his campaign. We were pretty open to supporting that campaign, and the more we looked, the worse it got. The guy, he's not well. It's pretty clear from a lot of things he does. Like some of it is scumbag lawyer stuff. Well, I didn't really mean that they engineered the virus to not infect Jews. I was just citing a study. You know, it's some lawyer scumbaggery. Then there's the crazy of the fact that he said it in the first place. Then there's the crazy of stories like this. What kind of like normal person, like, look, I could almost respect it if you were like really like some off the grid kind of guy who grew up with Kennedy money, but now you live off the grid, off the land, you're doing that. But he's not that. He didn't live his life that way. So what do you, you're a Kennedy and you've lived like a Kennedy. So what are you grabbing bear carcasses off the side? You want bear meat? I'm sure you can pick up a phone and get it by the end of the day. What point are you making here?
Who keeps roadkill in their car? Even if you were so crazy as to do it, who keeps it in their car all day?
Well, right. Like the meat is going to spoil.
Car's gonna
Although
stink.
I mean that's an example of you're playing backwoods outdoorsman. If you knew shit about shit,
right,
you would know that you can't keep it in your car all day and then eat it.
Right. Yeah. For sure. All right. My real name, $50. Let's get the cowbell out for my real name. Happy birthday, Russell. Groveling is
cowbell up
beneath
here.
you, Keaton. Oh, that's right. Russell did not bring the cowbell.
Well,
I forgot.
hang on. We do have
the cowbell.
I could have used a
drop.
little more cowbell.
So thank you, my real name. Appreciate that very much. If I missed a Rumble rant, I apologize. We are getting used to this new interface. I don't know if they time out after a while. If you don't display them after a while, if they time out, that would be a big problem too. I'm in for $1, but you will have to find your own hooker with teeth. Yeah, that would be pretty dumb. So we'll have to see if that's the case. But Tuss again, I'm in for $1, but you will have to find your own hooker with teeth. There you go. Thank you, Tuss again. Appreciate that. His Highness says, happy 80th birthday, Russ. You don't look like a day over 75. Have a great day, buddy. Thank you, His Highness.
Yeah, no, that's from a while back. I don't think you lost any.
I think I may have lost one. I'm not sure. Now they seem to be going away. So we'll have to, like I said, folks, this is the first time doing this, so I'll have a little powwow with Rumble and see what's going on, if it's me or if it's the tech. Happy birthday, Grifter, says EJ Imagine. Thank you, Eileen. That's Eileen Jones, EJ, who made us our logo, our cartoon logo. That's Eileen. Canyon Dude, happy birthday. Thank you, Canyon Dude. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kinky 2, just wondering why I can't rewind in Rumble. You should be able to rewind. Like I said, this is our first day using this new tech, so if it's a little bit wonky,
it's glitchy, man.
Yeah,
it's glitchy.
We'll
look, man. We're all kidding aside. Like, yes, Rumble is definitely thinking outside the box and making innovations. Like the way they're doing this with ads is very clever. With ad reads. But yeah, it's glitchy, man. Which, I mean, YouTube's been around for how long?
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, of course. But I did put the option that you should be able to rewind. So it could be me. Like I said, this is the first time we're doing this. So I apologize for any imperfections, even if they're not my fault. It's our show. Buck stops here kind of thing. Happy birthday. It's a great day to be a dissident. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that very much. Let's see here. Kaladin Cat Blessed. Happy birthday, Russell. Keaton, how's August? Have you slept? I actually have been sleeping better than with the first two. I mean, the first two guys were twins, so that was like no sleep. So this is, interrupted sleep, but not terrible. Not terrible. It has been worse. Okay, see, here's Skinky. Suddenly rewind is working now. Okay, good. Yeah, that's this shop for you here. Well, good. Glad it worked out. Okay. User name, happy birthday, Russell. Sorry you got your YouTubes tied by Google. Yeah, thank you, user Dave. Appreciate that very much. It's all good if you're not hosting for now, says His Highness. I lust after Tusker almost as much as I do you, Keaton, you sexy bastard. Thank you. Forget about Amanda. Run away to North Dakota. Is that where you're from, North Dakota? I thought you were Canadian. I thought you were Canadian. Are you near the North Dakota border?
You know, I was a big fan of the show, but I think that's South Dakota, Deadwood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's
I really want to go there, man, because they have the hotel is like still there. The graves of a lot of the characters from the show were there in the cemetery.
Got
I
it.
would totally do that.
Yeah, that is South Dakota, for sure. Oops, what happened here? Okay.
And actually, they recently did the movie wrapping up the series. That was good too.
Oh yeah, the movie. Yeah. I didn't see the movie. I only saw. I mean, it was only on the season. The series got canceled, right?
The series got canceled. I think they only did 2 seasons, maybe 3.
I think 3. Yeah,
maybe 3. That writing was genius. That was genius. There's never been anything like that on TV.
Eric sorry.
They extrapolated the way that everybody comments on this. We even got into this a little bit in the live show with Kynan and Jose, at which they were right about. Literacy was really, really a national priority in the early United States and in the colonies even. And that's why people always comment. You see these letters from Civil War soldiers, and they're at this high literary style, even if they're just common soldiers, even if they're not from elevated backgrounds. So they just, with Deadwood, they extrapolated that. Like, okay, so how did these people, if they wrote that way, how did they speak? They combined this Shakespearean English with crude vulgarity. Did you watch Deadwood?
No, I never did.
You should really check that out. Like, that writing was genius. They really sat down to think about what the linguistics of that would be like. Nobody's ever attempted anything like that.
Yeah, I will check that out because that's I'm sure that's on Max, and it's not that many episodes, obviously. Judy Denmark, Russell, happy birthday, 55. You're just a baby, my dear. And boys, your interview with Glenn and LaJuan Lowry was freaking brilliant. You are great interviewers. Thank you, Judy. Appreciate that very much. And yes, we enjoyed that interview very much. We had a great time with them. My real name, who eats bear meat, much less rotting bear meat. Yes, it is. That is quite the story there. Rebel Shelter NY says, I'm from Goshen, New York. And it is not crazy at all to pick up the bear. If the meat goes bad, you still get the hide. All right, great. Well, you're an expert.
I mean, the Goshen, hide, right? I could see that if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Little bear skin rug going on.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Okay, here we go. Let's go to some YouTube super chats here. Shina Billy says, happy birthday, Russ. Cheers, friends. Thank you, Shina Billy. Richard, happy birthday, Russ. Kamala equals Manchurian candidate. Derek P says, happy birthday, Russ, for $5. Thank you, Derek P. Looking great. Thank you guys all very much for these super chats. Like I said, we are able to read them. I'm not able to display them today because of our new tech setup, which I'll have to work out. But thank you. That's very kind of you. We will read all of them. John Freeze, thanks for the $4.99. Happy birthday, Russ. May your inner Leo lion be happy. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Michael Castillo for $100. Thank you so much, Michael.
Boom.
Says, good afternoon, gentlemen. Happy birthday, Russell Dobular. Let me get that cowbell. Russell is in New Hampshire for his birthday, so we were without the real cowbell, but we do have the sound drop cowbell. Black Spock for $2 says, happy birthday, Russell. JM for $2 gives us a nice thumbs up. And Arcana Soul for $5, making Roseanne look at you like you're the crazy one is some kind of achievement. Yes, that's
exactly.
Very good point.
Like like her demeanor was so un-Roseanne-like that Keaton pointed out to me because I started talking about, oh yeah, and that woman. He was like, that's Roseanne. I'm like, what? I went back. I was like, holy shit! It's so not. It's just so not her to be in the role of the shocked matron. as this crazy bastard is going on about the bear in his trunk.
Yeah.
Like that should be her story.
Right. Right, exactly. It should be her. It should be what she says. Exactly. All right, folks. Let's move on here. All right. So that was the comedy portion of the show. Very, very serious news to report right now. Very serious news. Big news. Kamala Harris has chosen for vice president, governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz. Kamala Harris names Tim Walz, the Minnesota governor, as running mate. As you can see that picture there, I put up a little joke tweet on Twitter that I thought was good. I said Tim Walz is like if Bernie went on a new TV show, Goy Eye for the Jew Guy, because he looks like Bernie Sanders got a little Midwestern wasp makeover there. Tim Walz, that's what he looks like, and that's kind of what his politics are.
Where I come from, if you find a bear by the side of the road, you put it in the trunk.
You put it in the trunk of the car.
You take it home. You
What's
make
the story here? What's the story here? No scandal here. The Guardian reports Kamala Harris, the de facto Democratic nominee for U.S. president, has named Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, as her running mate ahead of the November election. The decision ends in tense speculation over which candidate Harris would pick to go up against Donald Trump, the Republican nominee and former president, and his choice for vice president, the Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Walz first ran for office in 2006 in a Republican-leaning congressional district, upsetting the incumbent. He kept the seat until he won the Minnesota governorship in 2018, then again in 2022. Under his leadership, the state has seen significant progressive legislative wins in recent years, including universal school meals, legalized marijuana, abortion protections, and gun control measures. Before he entered public office, he was a school teacher in Mankato, Minnesota, teaching geography to high school students. He also served in the Army National Guard for 24 years. In an Instagram post announcing the pick, Harris said, "One of the things that stood out to me about Tim is how his convictions on fighting for middle-class families run deep. It's personal." She cited his upbringing in Nebraska and how after his father's death to cancer, his family relied on Social Security survivor benefits to make ends meet. He used the GI Bill to attend college. He coached high school football and advised the high school's gay-straight alliance. His background is impressive in its own right, but also informs his governing, she said. His Midwestern dad charm and straight talk propelled him up the list as a potential vice presidential pick, though, and as the head of the Democratic Governors Association, he has been stumping for Biden and Harris for the past year. It was his simple retort against Trump and his allies that caught national Democrats' attention most. He called them weird. That's right.
Yeah.
Got the whole weird thing going.
It started with him?
Yeah, he's the one who started it. His clips on TV shows went viral, showing him pushing back on Republicans' weird behavior while showcasing a list of what he had accomplished as a Democratic governor and how Democrats would govern if they win the White House again. So this was the interview that arguably launched Governor Tim Walz's VP candidacy, where he debuted the weird attack on J.D. Vance and Republicans that ended up sticking.
Is that people like J.D. Vance know nothing about small-town America. My town had 400 people in it, 24 kids in my graduating class, 12 were cousins, and he gets it all wrong. It's not about hate. It's not about collapsing in. The golden rule there is mind your own damn business. Their policies are what destroyed rural America. They've divided us. They're in our exam rooms. They're telling us what books to read. And I think what Kamala Harris knows is bringing people together around the shared values, strong public schools, strong labor unions that create the middle class, health care that's affordable and accessible. Those are the things. You look what they're talking about. They went right to division. They did not give us a plan on health care. Donald Trump talked about infrastructure. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris built bridges, built roads. So I think this is going back to the bread and butter, getting away from this division. We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary. and I think bringing back people together, well, it's true. These guys are just weird. And it's, you know, they're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That's what they go at. That's not what people are interested in. And there is angst because robber barons like J.D. Vance and Donald Trump gutted the Midwest, told us we didn't do that. They talk about private schools. Where in the heck are you going to find a private school in a town of 400? Those are public schools. Those are great teachers that are out there making a difference and gave us an opportunity to succeed. That angst that J.D. Vance talks about in Hillbilly Elegy, none of my hillbilly cousins went to Yale, and none of them went on to be venture capitalists or whatever. It's not who people really are. So I think that message doesn't resonate. You saw it yesterday. The energy out here exploded. We all broke fundraising records, but that's not what I look at. Door knocks are full. Phone banks are full. People are talking about what's possible. We are finally on offense about an America where we're all together. So good. Have Orban down to Florida. The vice president will come out here and stand in a Planned Parenthood. She stands in a Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Paul. That's what people want to see.
So that was arguably, like I said, the interview that started it all. The Guardian continues, Republicans immediately began attacking Walz as a radical leftist and claims that picking Walz was a massive gift to Republicans, suggesting his presence on the ticket will tank the Harris campaign. In a statement, the Trump campaign called Walz a West Coast wannabe who has spent his governorship trying to reshape Minnesota in the image of the Golden State. The campaign brought up a clip from 2017 where Walz talks about electoral maps that show broad swaths of red, saying those areas, are mostly cows and rocks. If Walz won't tell voters the truth, we will. Just like Kamala Harris, Tim Walz is a dangerously liberal extremist, and the Harris-Walz California dream is every American's nightmare, the Trump campaign said. And RNC Research tweeted out this little video. This is what they're talking about the cows and the rocks.
Red and blue, and there's all that red across there, and Democrats go into depression over it. It's mostly rocks and cows that are in that red area.
Okay, now, look, that's not the most artful way to put it, but he wasn't saying everybody out there is a hick. He's saying if you look at a map of the country, most of the area is red, but those are low population areas, which is why the country is mostly split 50-50 red-blue. So, yeah, I mean, there was a better way to put that, but that is not exactly the deplorables line as it came out from the mouth of Trump's former opponents, as we know. So Walz, and look, we'll get into this in the next segment because a lot of conservatives and even some more centrist Democrats are upset that Josh Shapiro was passed over, which is just really funny how, you know, a lot of conservatives are very anti-DEI, yet they say it's only could be anti-Semitism that meant that they didn't pick Josh Shapiro because they're anti-Semitic. Well, I thought you're anti-DEI. In a sense, this is a DEI pick. Like, where's that criticism? Like, we knew Kamala was going to pick a normie white man, which limited her options to normie white men. So is this not DEI to a certain extent? Of course it is. But given the option between Shapiro and Walz, there's no doubt, I think, that Walz was the smarter political pick from the Harris campaign team. Shapiro would have just been a political disaster. People were saying, well, Shapiro will win you Pennsylvania. Not necessarily. I mean, the VP doesn't necessarily put a state in your column. If Shapiro wins you Pennsylvania, he probably loses you Michigan because the Arab voters would just totally jump ship if you literally put an IDF goon as your VP. So that's kind of a wash. This was the smartest choice they could have made. Of course, he's going to be attacked as a far leftist, a radical. Yeah. Right. I don't think that's going to stick. Yeah, there are certain things, putting the tampons in the boys' rooms, you know, in Minnesota, and certain culture war things that they're definitely going to hit him on. They would hit just about any Democrat on things like that, I think. So I think all things considered, this was definitely the smartest pick they'd have made. Now, of course, you're seeing a lot of so-called progressives and leftists gush over this as if this is a game changer. It's not a game changer. First of all, the VP pick is really never a game changer. This is going to be big news for a week or two, getting them through the convention. And then I think, he'll probably barnstorm the Rust Belt a little bit, which might boost their numbers a little bit there. But the first rule of VP is do no harm. And I don't think they did themselves much harm because I don't think they'd have attacked. Look, they're going to attack whoever the nominee is, whoever you pick. They're going to hit him on some of the woke stuff. Like the trans stuff, which I don't know that much about. I have to look more into it. And they're going to hit him on, the tampons in the boys' room and this and that. They're going to try to hit him on the George Floyd protest stuff, on those riot stuff, which is, I don't know. Will that stick? I mean, look at what's going on in the UK now. We're going to talk about that later. Generally, I think first do no harm. I think they probably made the smartest pick they could have with this guy.
They didn't do what I thought they were going to do, because with the Democrats, usually if you don't want to lose money on a bet, think about what the worst thing they could possibly do is, and you'll usually win. So I thought they were going to go with Shapiro because that's the worst thing they could possibly have done. It would have just been an enormous fuck you to what vaguely, notionally, nominally progressive identifying people they have left who are still willing to vote for them. But hey, no, she went the other way. Pretty cued in. What's that?
No, sorry, you froze a little bit, but you're back.
I don't know a lot about his record, but I'm pretty cued into the kind of culture war language he's invoking there. So it seems to me his shtick is to try to put a kind of folksy, avuncular style on "we want books with graphic cocksucking in your child's junior high school," and it's so weird that some people want to control that. So I assume that the Trump campaign will hit him right back on that. He's using that kind of coded language. So as a lot of Republicans have pointed out, do you really want to litigate who's weirder of the two parties? And so far they haven't really cranked up their effort on that. But with things like that, I assume they would. That having been said, from what the article gets into and some other things I've read, he has passed some economic legislation that is helpful, free school lunches, things like that.
Right.
So that's a good pick in that sense, rather than just, a hedge fund goon, and especially to put him up against Vance, who very much in a lot of his record is a hedge fund goon. To have this guy who can play that kind of role, when you put them together in a debate, I think this guy will eat Vance's lunch. When we talked about the litigation of whether Vance was a bad pick, you had some people say, well, that's a media narrative. We don't do media narratives, man. We're looking at, I thought that from the first time I saw him running for Senate. He's just not that good. He's not that good. Is he the worst person ever to be picked? No. In my lifetime, it was probably Dan Quayle. But he's not a natural. He's not real good. He's young. He doesn't have a lot of experience, and he doesn't have that thing. He just doesn't. He's not awful. I thought he batted away when they asked him about Trump saying Kamala turned black. I thought he handled that pretty well, but you could also tell that he had heavily prepared for that question because he knew someone was going to ask him. But in general, he's not a great political talent. And just watching this guy there, I mean, he's sharp, he's polished, he knows what his brand is, and he's very good at putting it out there. And hey, a guy with that demeanor saying weird, he can get away with that because he reads as such a normie. I don't think that's going to be the panacea that a lot of the Democratic Party complex seems to think it is.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Vance, it's easy to get caught up in the momentum. Politics is a lot like baseball. I got into politics at first because I was into baseball. It's a game of numbers, but it's also a game of momentum. You know, when you have the momentum as a baseball team, the manager looks like a genius. Everything he does works. The pitcher comes in when he pulls the one pitcher for the other, and the pitcher strikes out the side. He looks like a genius. When you don't have the momentum, and clearly now the Republicans don't have the momentum in this race, you look like an idiot. And so, you know, I think there's some panic involved in, oh my God, did we fuck up with Vance? Vance could barnstorm Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin and boost you 3/4 of a point. So if it's close, that could be a difference maker. And in that sense, I thought, you know, the pick was smart enough. So I don't think it was a terrible pick. I think
Tulsi. You should have gone with Tulsi.
Well, part of this now is that part of going last, going second, picking your VP pick second, which is part of the sort of reason why this whole Biden switcheroo kind of worked out. Now you can pick a vice president that is a good foil to J.D. Vance. And yeah, Walz is a perfect foil to J.D. Vance because he's a Midwestern folksy guy who's not backed by fucking Peter Thiel, right? Like he actually reads as a more authentic version of what Vance presents himself as, which is another, like I said, an advantage of coronating your nominee at the last minute and then getting to pick your VP after the Republicans have already picked theirs. Right. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think there was political wisdom in that pick, whoever made it. A lot more is going to come out about Tim Walz in the next few weeks. We already have an idea as to where they'll go, how they will attack him. The other thing that the Harris campaign is doing a good job of is pacing out these things to dominate the news cycle heading into the DNC. They didn't pick him too soon where they cover him for a week and then the news cycle neutralizes. No, the talk of the campaign is going to be Tim Walz for the next week. And then where are we? Now we're at the convention where the talk is the convention and they're going to get a momentum boost out of that. They're kind of pacing things out to keep the news cycle on positive stories about the Democrats, which is smart. And I said, look, you know, Biden is obviously far gone. Kamala is obviously not a huge talent, to say the least. But the fact that they got elected the first time means they have some politically talented people behind them. Like their teams are competent enough. And the team seems competent enough to not only choose wisely in this VP relative to their other choices, but also pace things out to keep control of the news cycle. At this rate, they could head into the convention with a national lead. Real Clear Politics already has it now dead heat. So you go into the convention with a lead.
I thought it's 2 points, no? Trump has a 2-point advantage.
According to Real Clear Politics, it's a dead heat now. Yeah. So if they get into the convention with an advantage, they can come out of the convention with a lead. And now you're in a 2-month sprint. But they definitely dodged a bullet with Shapiro, and time will tell how these attacks against Walz land. Some will, some won't. But you have to pick somebody. And I think they didn't do themselves much harm here.
Yeah, well, Biden's team managed to get a guy with dementia elected by barely showing him to the public throughout. And obviously COVID made that easier. But something that people were a little surprised by once the Democratic Party and Obama anointed Biden is that there was actually a competent team there behind him, that those guys actually were pretty good strategists who were propping him up. Now with Kamala, you're not seeing her bring in her nepotism network of her sister and all of that. It seems like she's similarly bringing in a lot of the best of the Obama or Biden, or I hesitate to say she is. You know, my theory, and I'm going to work on a shitpost about this, is they are just seeing how far they can push the idea of candidate as avatar. Because there's still nothing on her page about policy. All vibes. She hasn't given a single policy speech. So I don't think she's really making these decisions. And that would be in keeping with what we know about the Biden team that got the Crypt Keeper elected, that these guys are not bad at what they do. And they might have, Kamala just does not strike me as someone smart enough to have made that decision.
No, this is obviously her team vetting people. I'm sure she met with people just to make sure they got along well enough. But yeah, no, this was obviously a staff decision. And like you said, you know, if they are able to push Biden over the finish line, they got to know how to do something right. right? It's not like you had on the Hillary Clinton campaign, you had these just Nepo babies and, nephews and nieces of Robbie Mook, who's a fucking idiot. Like they didn't know what the hell they were doing. This team does seem more competent, and I think this choice certainly reflects that. Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Yes, the Rumble thing. Somebody just said, don't worry about new tech. You're in for the fight. That was a $6 Rumble rant that we just lost because they're timing out. So that's another thing I have to bring up.
They're timing out.
Yeah, they're timing out. They're disappearing after like 20 minutes, which, I mean, that's not a problem if you get 5 Rumble rants per show and you can stay on top of them, but we get more than that. So I got to bring that up to them. All right, I have some notes. We'll have a meeting. We have a week off now, so we have 5 days off. So I will have a meeting with them. RB Ham, thank you. RFK Jr. never fails to disappoint. For COVID dissidents like myself, he will always be in high regard. But his support for the Likudniks in Israel and his repeated brainworm behavior is appalling. I mean, I didn't find this appalling. It's not like he killed the bear, but it's just fucking weird.
It was just this is an appropriate place for the use of that appellation.
For weird. Yeah, exactly.
This is weird. Very weird.
His Highness, Walsh apparently set up a snitch line during COVID so Minnesotans could snitch on each other. That's the guy we need in the White House. Yeah, like I said, there's going to be a lot about him that they're going to hit him on. I'm not saying.
I mean, this guy was completely not on my radar until 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. No, look, there's gonna be stuff on him that will come out for sure. There is against any VP. I'm just, when we talk like this, folks, obviously we're not endorsing anybody. We're just talking as analysts. We're just talking as pundits.
Exactly.
Exactly. I'm not. That's why I'm kind of dispassionate about this. I find it interesting and newsworthy, but I'm not endorsing the guy, as you'll see pretty soon. Russ and Keaton, with your height difference, Jewish heritage, NYC origins, and excellence, you are basically modern Simon and Garfunkel, a bridge over the troubled water of America. Well, thank you, Ken.
Well,
that is very kind of you.
If you're feeling down.
Yeah, exactly. My real name, Tim Walls, looks like the horrid love child of Bernie and Darth Cheney. He does kind of look like Bernie.
He does.
Cheney. That's actually not
call.
Bad.
Yes.
That's not bad at all. His Highness, Keestradamus, do you think Harris picking a running mate who is so far to the left will help blunt some of the damage Republicans are doing to themselves? Attacking her liberalism will blunt some of the damage. You mean because he's to her left, so she looks like a centrist? No, I don't think so. I think they are attacking. They're already saying this is the most left-wing ticket ever, which, I mean, who knows? That might actually be true. Not that we have a real history of left-wing tickets. I mean, going back to McGovern, maybe it is. Who knows? Eric Rousseau, I'm offended by them calling anyone weird. Someone with Asperger's who has been bullied and dismissed for being weird his whole life. Fuck the Democrats. There you go, Eric Rousseau.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. Okay. All right. There we go. All right. So that's that. Okay. Like I said, folks, apologize for any issues today. So now we're going to read some super chats. Miss Jiffernasty, like I said, folks, if you're joining late, we are running on a new tech system today, which is supposed to allow us to display these, but this one is not. So I will have to have a meeting with Rumble about this because it won't be workable if we can't do this. The most interesting man in the world, RFK Jr., but like in a scary way. Yeah. Conor McGregor, the brainworm made me do it. Joe Biden, thank you. Happy birthday. That reminds me, I got to get that boar out of my trunk. That's Lorraine Brightbill. Thanks for the $4.99. David Rose, thanks for the $2. RFK Jr. is simply unbearable. Oh, look at that dad joke from David Rose there.
Oh, no.
MCFC for $9.99 says, happy birthday, Mr. RD. Thank you, MCFC.
Thank you.
SRM84 says, happy birthday, Russ. Nice to see someone older than me. There you go. Coco
You'll
Flo
get
says,
there someday.
Yes, you'll
willing.
get there. You'll catch up.
You'll get there.
Coco Flo says, happy birthday, Russ. Wishing you many more.
Thank you.
Aspen Fallen, born and raised in Mankato, pronounced Mankato. Okay. Aspen Fallen, thank you for that. Yeah, Minnesota, you got those funny names up there. The Last Walls, Dodger 12, that's clever. Thanks for the $2. Sammer D for $4.99 says, happy birthday, Russell.
Thank you.
Club Lotta year round for $50 says to health, happiness, and many good stories to share today and all your days to come, Russ. That's very sweet.
Grazie.
Let's get a virtual cowbell for $50 there from Club Lotta Year Round. Beautiful. Okay.
One man. That was me.
Aspen Fallen says VP bathed in the waters of Lake Minnetonka. Thank you, Aspen Fallen.
Keaton's too young to get that.
Yeah, I am.
That's a Purple Rain reference.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, Prince, of course, from there. Poll Tim Walz is on approval compared to a J.D. Vance. Yeah, that'll be an interesting comparison there. Shina Billy for $5 says Walz canceled a meeting with Palestinian Americans once he found out they had actual policy demands and he couldn't virtue signal using their pain. Oh, we're going to get to that. So some of that in the next piece here. We may be in a period, says Cool Blue, thanks for the $1.99, which ours lose winnable races. Yes, well, we're already in that period. I mean, they lost a lot of winnable races.
I mean, that's
in
been
2022.
going on since Biden got elected.
Yep. Well, since
Biden's election itself was a very good example
That's
of that.
true. That was a very winnable race that they blew. But Roe really accelerated that. And I think you're right, Cool Blue. The Amazing Blumpkin, thanks for the $5. He stole the He-Man woman hater line from the Lucas Brothers Netflix special. Yeah, I heard that line before, and I couldn't tell where I heard it from.
Okay, now I'm really going to show my exerness. Do you know where that really comes from?
Yeah, it's somewhere else. I forget, but I know that line. Yeah.
It comes from the Little Rascals.
Oh, okay. All
they
right.
start the He-Man Woman Haters Club in the Little Rascals in one of the Little Rascals episodes.
Interesting. Beautiful. All right. All right. Hey Russell, why don't we see how this ad thingy works? Why don't we do a schmata? I'm gonna do a schmata. All right, we're gonna see how this works. We're gonna try to move some product for Rumble so that they can fix their shit up. All right, so we're gonna do this first time. Here we go.
All right. So we've really been trying to decide which ads to do because listen, we don't want to be dependent on YouTube because they have done it. They have shut down channels with no explanation, no warning overnight, and who knows what's going to happen going into this election season. That having been said, we're trying to be careful about what we read. So we're only going to be reading ads about MREs because we think the apocalypse is just around the corner, and special foil hats that protect you from space rays that control your brain.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start off easy. Let's start off with some coffee. Let's move some coffee. Coffee is fairly innocuous, right? It's time to say goodbye to Starbucks and say hello to Rumble's 1775 coffee. Unlike other brands, this is a coffee that backs free speech and does not genocide Palestinians. That's true. That also makes it much better than Starbucks. Conscious free coffee, and it's unapologetic in its commitment to free speech. So visit 1775coffee.com. Use the promo code STUDIO40 to get 40% off any coffee subscription. Wow, so you can get a subscription for 40% off. That's pretty good. That brings it down to a pretty cheap price because if you get a subscription plan for 40% off, that's damn good. The coffee comes in medium and dark roasts. It also comes in pea berry, which is similar to Kona coffee. In other words, this stuff is premium. Nobody's ever tasted coffee like this, folks. This is the best coffee. People are saying, a lot of very smart people are saying that you have to, if you don't drink this coffee, you're a loser. So
and unlike the competition, if you have uric acid building up in your urethra, it'll clear it out.
Yeah, exactly. So click the link in the live chat.
The only coffee that does that.
That's right. Link in the live chat, and also go directly to 1775coffee.com and use the promo code STUDIO40 to get 40% off today. So there you go. That's our first
Howard
thing.
Schultz doesn't get a penny from this company.
In the fucking bank. There you go. Look at that. Our first little ad read for, and that is Rumble's own coffee brand, by the way, folks. That is Rumble's own coffee brand. But see, now what do I got to do? Now I got to go put the link in the chat. See, they got to be a little clearer. All right, here. I'll put the link in the chat over there on Rumble, 1775coffee.com.
This is the only coffee that is strained through a dirty canvas in Uruguay.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. Good shit right there. All right. So there, we moved some coffee. What do you guys think?
Special
Did we do well?
flavor in it.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, coffee. I mean, there's nothing wrong with good coffee. And yeah, we're gonna like I said, be careful about
fuck you,
what
quartering.
products we read. Yeah,
We're coming for you.
That's right. That's right. We are coming for you, Jeremy.
So somebody said when I did who said that when I did the segment about Kamala's website being all merch. Somebody said it's as if the quartering had a presidential campaign.
That was I said that. I texted
you said that.
Yeah, it's like Jeremy's running for president. Oh, America, what a place. What a place. All right, be sure to go to justcoffee.com. Say that at the debate, every event he goes to. Just moving coffee. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope we nailed that for you guys. And for Rumble, maybe now you can, invest in, making the YouTube chat show up on the thing. That would be easy. Make it so they don't time out. Why would they time out? Why would you make it so that they time out?
Yeah, why would you even make it like that?
We need to have them on the thing the whole time because we
That's
can't.
so dumb.
Like, we're doing a show here. Like, we're doing a show. What if we have a half-hour conversation and we lose the chats because they expire after 20 minutes? Like,
and look, not as important, but when I'm in a flame war with one of our viewers, they need to be able to respond.
They need to be able to respond. Yeah, exactly.
Very fair. Otherwise, I look like a rubbernecker. I look like a welcher.
Exactly.
I look like the kind of guy that's going to slap you across the face with a white glove, announce pistols at dawn, and then not show up.
Yeah. Exactly. All right, folks. Well, a lot of liberals, a lot of progressives, a lot of good Bernie Democrats are happy about the Tim Walz pick, which you would think would make Van Jones happy about the Tim Walz pick since he's wasn't he part of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party? Well, this just shows you what a despicable sellout this guy is. Van Jones admits that Kamala picking Walz was her caving into some of these darker parts in the party in terms of appeasing anti-Jewish bigots that have gotten marbled into this party. Again, a lot of conservative Republicans said that the snubbing of Josh Shapiro was anti-Semitic, which is very strange for a cohort of people who are so against DEI. They seem to be really triggered that a Jewish man was passed over, and the only reason a Jewish man could get passed over is because of anti-Semitism. Well, you seem to be wanting some DEI in that field, right?
Genocidal intent could not ever be the reason.
Yeah, exactly. But here's Van Jones making the case that, Kamala caved to radical left-wing anti-Semites by picking Tim Walz.
A little risky, though, Van, that she didn't go with Shapiro to kind of lock down Pennsylvania. I mean, yes, David Challing was saying earlier, just because you pick him as your running mate doesn't mean you automatically win Pennsylvania. But I got to think it would have helped just a little bit.
Hey, listen, the conservatives, the right wing, the Republicans, they were chewing their fingernails down to the knuckle because they were afraid of a Josh Shapiro. They were afraid of a Mark Kelly. They're not as afraid of this new governor because they think they can define him. So here's the challenge you've got in this party. And people don't want to talk about it. We got to talk about it. On the one hand, you have a lot of young people who are concerned about Gaza. You have a lot of Muslims and Arabs and others. They have not felt seen by the Biden administration. You start hearing that genocide joke that was building.
Yeah.
And so those folks needed to have a candidate that they could feel comfortable with. This helps them in that regard. But you also have anti-Semitism that has gotten marbled into this party. You can be for the Palestinians without being an anti-Jewish bigot, but there are some anti-Jewish bigots out there. And there's some disquiet now, and there has to be. How much of what just happened is caving into some of these darker parts in the party? So that's going to have to get worked out. It's going to have to get talked through.
Well, hey, man, my search for a prostitute with teeth is over.
You're right. You found them. Exactly.
I found one.
Van Jones going with the line that by choosing Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro, Kamala's caving to anti-Jewish bigots within the party. And this is where I have to go here. It has to be noted. Look at this. Yanam Cohen, some Israeli official. He's got the silver check. There he is with a picture of Tim Walz. It has been an honor to work with Governor Walz on deepening the Israel-Minnesota partnership. Yeah. Thank you, Governor Tim Walz, for standing with Israel during our darkest hour on October 7th. The U.S.-Israel strategic alliance is strong and enduring. Our friend Nick Cruz, Tim Walz is a genocidal Zionist who opposes the BDS movement, this is the person the Bernie left is celebrating. And as you can see, item number 4 on that tweet there, opposition to the BDS movement. Walz has opposed the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, which seeks to pressure Israel through economic and political means. So we put that into Chat GPT. So it's not even that Tim Walz is anti-Israel. Tim Walz is terrible on this issue. Terrible. And yeah, I'm sorry to be a ball breaker here, but like, you're either a hardline free Palestiner or you are functionally speaking, a genocidal stooge. And that is what Tim Walz is. The fact that he is not literally a genocidal, like literally an IDF goon, which is what Josh Shapiro was. The fact that she didn't pick an IDF soldier makes her an anti-Semite because she considered him and thought, hey, maybe this is too much. Maybe this is too much for a party that is over 70% opposed to the genocide in Gaza. Because they didn't pick him, that means she caved to anti-Semitism.
They didn't want to spend the next 90 some odd days explaining why they picked a guy who compared protesters to the KKK while they're trying to win back Gen Z voters. Van Jones is really, and this is saying something. He is in the running for the most disgraceful, most morally compromised person on any of these channels because he knows better.
Of course.
You have some people like Claire McCaskill, I have no doubt believes every word that she says. She's just a horrible, horrible human being, top to bottom. Van Jones, man, he comes out of radicalism. He's educated in these matters. He knows what Israel is. He knows damn well whose bidding he's doing when he says things like this. The purpose of that soundbite is to give credibility to the idea that being anti-Zionist is being anti-Semitic, because where are your specifics? Anti-Semites have been marbled into the party. Well, okay, you're saying it's not anti-Semitic to be pro-Palestine, but you are saying it's anti-Semitic because otherwise, what do you mean by that? What do you mean anti-Semites have been woven into the party? Can you show me the people that you're talking about? Because I promise you, if pressed, what he's going to show you are people protesting what's going on in Gaza. Okay, so it is anti-Semitic then. This is the game, and there's another example. He's not stupid. That's all innuendo. He doesn't have to prove anything. He just puts that out there as an established fact to throw the stink and suspicion onto all resistance to this. Now, it's not working with the general public, but unfortunately, the people who would think that Van Jones and his ilk have anything to say that's worth listening to vote to a disproportionate degree because they tend to be politics news addicts who actually watch this shit. And they tend to be elderly. What is the average age on CNN? 69 of their viewers. These people have disproportionate power in an election.
Yes. And, I would expect that kind of rhetoric from where we have seen it for the most part, which is from the right. Glenn Beck, Ari Fleischer, Newt Gingrich. I would even expect it to some extent from like very centrist Democrats like Joe Manchin, but Joe Manchin has actually expressed approval at this pick. So the fact that Van Jones, who's certainly to the left of Joe Manchin, comes on here and says you cave to the radical left anti-Semites,
he's just
that is prostitution.
He's just a whore.
I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be crude, but that's what it is. That's what it is.
We try to avoid that here.
Yeah, there's a highbrow show, obviously, but that is what that is. There's no other way to explain that. What a disgrace! What a disgrace! Really is. Really unbelievable. Just extraordinary.
He must be. They must have doubled his pay because he's really been knocking it out of the park lately.
Yeah.
Almost every week, Van Jones says something where you just say, "How the fuck do you sleep at night, man? Like, can someone please send 3 ghosts to this guy's house tonight, please?"
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely despicable. All right, folks. Let's have a word from our sponsors here.
I'm just gonna say, there's a whole mess of wild turkeys walking by this window.
Oh, there you go. You are in New Hampshire now. Wilderness.
Let's see if you can see it. Can you see those turkeys?
No, it's a little far away.
They're off by the woods there.
But folks, you can help support our show by going to patreon.com/do dissidents and help keep us afloat here. For just $5 a month, you get your name up on the patron scroll here. You also get call-in access to our weekly post-show Q&As, which are every Sunday night exclusively on Rumble. You also get access to bonus streams. We are going to be doing an extra bonus stream in August because we owe you one because my kid had a medical emergency last time we were supposed to do one. But a lot of our convention stuff is going to be for patrons. So that will be fun. We will be doing convention coverage for everybody as well, but we're going to be very, very busy throughout the DNC, and some of that stuff will be patron exclusive. So you can go to patreon.com/do dissidents. You can go to dodissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals. For those watching on Rumble, that is the join button right underneath the video player, takes you to our locals. That's dodissidents.com, dodissidents.locals.com. For everyone else, you guys are the backbone of the show. We appreciate you all very, very much. John Freese on YouTube, thanks for the $4.99. I don't know if it actually happened, but I hear Vinny Barbarino saying that's so weird in my head. Thank you, John Freese.
That's good. Since it doesn't look like this is going away anytime soon, I should add that to the soundboard.
We really should, actually. That would be a good idea. Charles Marlowe, thanks for the $4.99. Dems say Kamala, non-Dems say Kamala. Is this like saying Caribbean unless talking about Pirates of the Caribbean? Interesting. I like that reference because it's true. I was always just in the habit of saying Kamala, so I guess I just happened to luck into getting her name right. But like Russ was in the habit of saying Kamala, and I noticed you haven't been able to break that. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's you get used to it. It's hard.
It's not intentional, except in the sense that as soon as they started doing that full court press on trying to make that racist, I said, I am making zero effort to correct what however I say it. I don't want to learn the way to say it because you're turning it into an issue that it is not, and you know it's not. It's dishonest. I'm not going to go out of my way to say it wrong, but because you put it that way, well, now I'm not going to go out of my way to say it right. Fuck you.
Fuck you. However it comes out, it comes out. Josh Woods, thank you for the $10. Happy birthday, Russ. I hope I get on my hands the full schmata recording by great granddad Menachem so I could play it live on clarinets. Oh, there you go. That would be a good clarinet tune. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Sparky, thanks for the $10. Russell asked about me, apparently assuming I was up to no good, and in the transition from YouTube to Rumble, I didn't notice. I didn't send the first part of my response until the show was over. Was that on the last show? I'm a retired engineer, says Sparky, who makes money from relying on real news, unlike normies who still rely on fake news. Once normies catch on, there won't be nearly as much money to be made. All right, well, we wish you luck, Sparky. And like I said, folks, we are on new tech today. We're supposed to be able to display these super chats, but I have to read them because the tech is not working properly, but we are reading all of them.
I tried to get him to call in. He said he sounds like an AI, which has led to a lot of speculation that he may be an AI.
Yeah.
Sparky may be an AI capable of passing the Turing test. Maybe the first.
Ah, there you go. Cool Blue says, is Van Jones among the boule? American Man, no one deems can't keep a dry eye Jones credible. That's true. He has lost a lot of credibility. Sparky for $10 says, it was in that context that I recommended the Duran, the Gray Zone, and Garland Nixon. I also recommend the Convo Couch, Sabby Sabs, Nico House, the new Atlas with Brian Burletic. Yeah, we know. I know all of them.
Yeah, we know all of those people. Let me ask you something, Sparky, because this is okay. It is impossible for us to watch everybody's show. We can't. We got our own show to put together. But all the people you list, how do you even watch all those shows?
Yeah, how do you watch all of that?
There's not enough hours in the day to watch all that.
Because 67, Dobbs Saves America. Great show last week. Thanks for the $20 over on Rumble. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's all I have for Rumble rants. The others have disappeared, which is not good. I think we only lost one. But we apologize if any of them got lost in the shuffle, but they are visible in the chat there. Okay, let's move right along here, folks. All right, so I did a little post of my own. I don't want to say what kind of post because this is the first 15 seconds of the clip, so we can't use that kind of language in the first 15 seconds. But I did a little monologue about how Republicans are being baited off message, trying to litigate the identity of Kamala Harris between is she Indian, is she black, and Trump at the black journalist event in Chicago, getting really into the weeds on that. This is why I think that is such a mistake. Not because there are no merits to their arguments. Kamala has referred to herself as South Asian before. Her bio on the White House website saying she's both the first black and the first South Asian to serve as vice president. But once you go there, the media doesn't let you go anywhere else. And case in point, here is Byron Donalds on George Stephanopoulos being given a really hard time about this to the point where it dominated just about the entire discussion.
President Trump questioning the vice president's racial identity.
Well, first, George,
notice at the beginning of this clip, he says, "Good to be with you," which means this was literally within 2 seconds of the interview starting. This is where he goes.
Why is former President Trump questioning the vice president's racial identity?
Well, first, George, in Chicago, he was responding to a question from, I believe, Rachel Scott. Like, this is really a phony controversy. I don't really care. Most people don't. But if we're going to be accurate, when Kamala Harris went into the United States Senate, it was AP that said she was the first Indian-American United States senator. It was actually played up a lot when she came into the Senate. Now she's running nationally. Obviously, the campaign has shifted. They're talking much more about her father's heritage and her black identity. It doesn't really matter. The president mentioned it. What he also talks about far more frequently is the fact that Kamala Harris is the person who created this massive inflation, which is destroying black families, white families, Hispanic families. It's her failure as border czar that has left our southern border wide open, more than 10 million illegal immigrants coming into our country, record fentanyl coming into our country, which has killed more Americans than at any other point in the history of our country with respect specifically to fentanyl, and the fact that she and Joe Biden have unleashed one of the worst foreign policies in the history of our country that has us on the verge of World War III. That is Kamala Harris's record. President Trump talks about that frequently, but yes, he did mention it in Chicago in response to a question from Rachel Scott.
And you just repeated the slur again. If it doesn't matter, why do you all keep questioning her identity? She's always identified as a black woman. She is biracial. She has a Jamaican father and an Indian mother. She's always identified as both. Why are you questioning that?
Well, George, first of all, this is something that's actually a conversation throughout social media right now. There were a lot of people who are trying to figure this out. But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue...
Sir, one second. You just did it.
See, this is why... Okay, I'm not defending George Stephanopoulos here. He's doing a sleazy thing. My point is, as an analyst, as a would-be advisor...
like he gives a shit. He's so offended.
Oh yeah, no, of course. I mean, he's doing his job, man. These are Democrat hatchetmen. This guy was in the Clinton war room. This guy helped Bill Clinton smear women who were accusing him of sexual assault and sexual harassment. Right? This guy has no morals. I'm not defending him. Please don't mistake what I'm doing as a defense of him. What I'm saying is the reason it is such a misstep to go down that road of litigating her heritage is because when you do an interview like this, they won't let you get off it. He asked him about it. Byron Donalds made a pretty good effort to pivot off of it and talk substance. He comes right back to it, and this time he doesn't let him pivot. As soon as Byron Donalds opens his mouth again, he goes right back, and look how pissed off he is. His teeth are seething, mad. You want to watch this again?
But again, that's a side issue, not the main issue. The main issue...
Sir, one second. You just did it. You just did it again.
Did it again.
Why do you insist on questioning her racial identity?
You want me to talk?
I want you to answer my question.
George, now that you're done yelling at me, let me answer. He talked about it on the stage yesterday in Atlanta for, 2 minutes? He spent more than 35, 40 minutes going after her record, talking about how radical of a senator that she was. She was the most liberal senator in the United States, in the United States Senate. That is a fact. He talked about the job that she did as vice president of the United States, a job, I will add, which has been a failure for the American people. I know you guys like to glom on to this that he talks about in jest or in a serious manner for about a minute or so, but what you do not cover is the litany of failures of Kamala Harris. That's what you're not covering, George.
So questioning somebody's racial identity for a couple minutes is okay?
He goes right back.
George, I'm going to tell you again, he brought it up. AP is the...
This just repeats itself over. You don't have to watch the whole thing. That's the point. The point is, once you go down that road, they won't let you go anywhere else. And this is not... See, in 2016, Trump made a lot of these mistakes early on in the process because there was a primary and Hillary Clinton was going through a primary. And so a lot of those gaffes that he made, a lot of those distractions were early enough in the calendar where they didn't hurt him as much, because what happened right around this time in 2016? It was right around this time in 2016. It was after the DNC. It was after the Democrats put the Khan family, the Gold Star family, on stage at the convention, baiting Trump into attacking them. He took the bait, idiot that he is, and the campaign was in shambles. Trump was down by 13 points nationally. What did Trump do at that point? He swapped out Paul Manafort for Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon came in, and there was no more of that shit. They ran a flawless campaign for the 2.5 months from mid-August through November, and they pulled off an incredible comeback. They're not doing that this time. I see them going the wrong way this time. They're getting more into this. They are leaving themselves open to this kind of shit constantly. They don't have 10 months anymore. This is not like, oh, we're working out the kinks. No. Part of the genius of the way the Democrats fucked over their voters and totally bypassed them and rigged the third primary in a row, part of the evil genius of that was now the Republicans don't have time to get their bearings. They don't have time to get their feet straight. Like now, the election's in 2.5 months, and this kind of shit is par for the course. Of course, the liberal media is going to try and sandbag you like this. You cannot give them the opportunity to do that, and that's what they're doing. And that's why I think the momentum has shifted as it has. And if they want to reverse it, they just have to get very disciplined. And I just don't see that level of discipline right now.
Okay, so you have a broader point that you're making that I agree with. I'm going to be a little contrarian, as I have been throughout on this particular point, and we'll see this more in the next clip. Trump, give the devil his due. He's got good instincts for where fault lines are. He's got good instincts for where to troll, for where to push a sore spot. He hit right on a fault line in the black community that no one but Donald Trump would ever have gone ahead and articulated, particularly a white politician. It's hard to imagine anyone other than Trump would decide, you know what? I want to litigate this in public. This is one of those conversations like colorism that usually takes place in that community quietly outside of the media spotlight. And that's why a lot of people just aren't even aware of that conversation. It's kept under wraps to not give the establishment that ammunition to use against that community in the way that Trump is doing here. That is why these conversations are kept quiet and within the community. He hit it. And now that opened up a whole thing, because that is not an uncommon view in that community. And in the next clip, we'll see the guy talks about, that came up with Obama too. And what's really, you want to see propagandists. The person doing the interview has oh shit, don't you end my career by continuing to talk about this on this network on my watch, motherfucker. Like, it was very Colbert when Jon Stewart started talking about Wuhan. Like, she just does not want to let him, and he's a black man, and she is not. She does not want to let, and he's not supporting Trump's position. He simply explains what goes on in the community around this. She does not want to let him talk about it. Now, if you look at the latest polling, and hey, it could change, Trump's still doing extraordinarily well for a Republican with the black community. So, in my opinion, you have a fair amount of that community that appreciates him talking about that. And I don't think he loses much. I don't think he gains anything from it, honestly. I think anybody who felt that way probably liked Trump already. But I don't think he loses anything. In terms of white normies, honestly, I don't know that he really loses anything there. Like, I don't know that anyone who was going to vote for Donald Trump was bothered by that.
No, but there's opportunity cost to getting sidetracked with this shit, because these are moments when this is time spent not hammering the issues that you are more popular on than the Democrats are.
And given that in the end,
it's not a year out where you have, oh yeah, we'll talk about it later. This is later. We're less than 100 days to go here.
I'm basically saying the statement is being portrayed as extremely damaging, and I don't agree with that. I don't think it's extremely damaging to him. In terms of what you're talking about, yes, because it drags you off message. It drags you off talking about immigration. It drags you off talking about the economy. And it seems like somebody said that to them, because you can see what Byron Donaldson keeps trying to redirect back to those issues. I would imagine, and we'll see when we do the stock market segment, they already dropped an ad trying to tie Kamala to the economy. And I think they're going to want to get back to that. But did it hurt him the way it's being portrayed? Like, oh my, like people getting the vapors that he said that? No, I don't think so.
No, it's not disqualifying. I mean, nothing he says is going to be disqualifying. Everybody thought that about the John McCain. I like people who weren't captured. Like, I'm not saying it is damning in that way. I'm saying this is sloppy. It's sloppy, and in a close race, you can't afford to be sloppy, especially when the momentum is turned around. At this point, I didn't think that Kamala was going to get a debate. If the momentum reverses, if she comes out of the convention with a lead, he may agree to a debate to try and get that reset, and rejigger the campaign back on message, because I think it's off message at this point in a way that does not help him.
That I agree with.
John M. in Minnesota, what is happening to these chats?
Hang on, we have that second clip now.
No, I know that'll be its own.
Oh, we're doing it
its
as
own
a
piece.
B?
Yeah, that's a B. That's what we call in business a B. Don't worry. Random comment.
A freaking deer walked past.
Yeah, no, you're out in the woods there now. Maybe there's a dead bear outside. You guys can have.
Maybe there's a dead
dinner.
bear. We can take. We're driving back Sunday.
Drive it back. Bring it into your apartment. Yeah, exactly.
Drop it in St. Nicholas Park.
Ask the super of the building. To tell the super you're building, hey, you want to give me a hand with this bear? What are you, a pussy? Oh, you can't carry a bear up? Yeah, you can't carry a bear up to the 5th floor. John M. in Minnesota, random comment. Have you pondered the fact that producing NFTs, remember them, Bitcoin mining, and AI tech consume a massive amount of energy? I have not pondered that fact, John M. I have not. I haven't delved into that as much as I probably should have. I will admit that. Okay, let's see here. Baron Saturday, thanks for the $5. Amen, Russ, and happy birthday. There we go. Russ is getting a lot of birthday love today.
Thank you.
Jack says, I can believe they resurrected Larry Bud Millman to be the VP pick. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. Okay. Sparky, don't be one of the chumps who make financial and other decisions based on CIA curated news. If the MSM comes up with anything worthwhile, the shows I listed pointed out, you can't eschew MSM. Thank you, Sparky. Dwayne Vogel, Kamala Chameleon, Fugazi, and Fakakta. There you go. Fugazi and Fakakta. Dwayne Vogel. I like that. Appreciate that. All right. Let's move on here to a B part of this segment. Okay, so Donald Trump has hit on a certain fault line by delving into the question of whether Kamala is more black or more Indian. And this gives you a sense of how allergic the corporate media is to this conversation. I'm, of course, on the record saying that this is off message. It's undisciplined. It doesn't help him. But this is a kind of a different question that this raises here, this piece of video. So here is Rehan Salam bringing this up and getting the Jon Stewart on Colbert treatment, as Russell said earlier. Really didn't want to let him finish.
This is necessarily a good thing. But what I will say is that for a lot of Americans, particularly a lot of Black Americans, there is some sense of discomfort about the fact that when you look at high profile, high status, successful Black Americans, many of them are themselves multiracial, first or second generation Americans, immigrants or kids of immigrants, or they're themselves intermarried. There are some folks, there's a group called the American Descendants of Slaves, ADOS, a kind of emerging movement that you see in some spaces where people say, hey, wait a second, you have folks who are not part of this multi-generational, long Black American story who are claiming this mantle. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, Lulu.
I'm just
saying
shocked that this is an argument that you are putting forward.
This is something I'm talking about as an analyst to describe the fact that the Black community is not a monolith. There are a lot of complicated, conflicted feelings. More than twice as many Black Americans oppose intermarriage as white Americans.
If your skin color is Black, you're Black. It is a completely ridiculous argument to be made.
And let me tell you, just to speak to that for a second, I dated a girl from Haiti for a while, and the perception of where you would get the pushback from was completely the opposite. When we went downtown, I never got any shit. When we were in Harlem, you'd get people saying shit on the street, like directly, would be saying shit about it.
In a country where you had the one drop, where you had the one drop rule, where you were actually penalized legally in this country if you had a single drop of Black blood, to now say that this woman who is clearly Black is somehow suspicious and is wearing a mantle and trying to assume some kind of ridiculous identity.
I'm describing public opinion. I'm describing the fact that this current does exist. And I think that when we're trying to understand the electorate, I think it's important to understand that this is one of those cleavages. I do not think that it was a good thing for Donald Trump to use this line of attack. I agree with Kara. Stick to policy.
This is not what Donald Trump was doing. You are trying to explain something. If you ask Donald Trump, what were you up to, Mr. Trump? He's not going to be like, that there's this current in the African American community that talks about the descendants of slavery. Do you think that is what he was up to? He was going there in order to do what he always does, which is to throw as much as he can against the wall and to see what sticks.
I'm afraid part of what I'm trying to do is actually try to give some insight into the fact that public opinion is changing, it's divided, and there is a big conversation about this. I don't think that this is the best angle to pursue, but I do think that when you're talking about the Black community, he's not looking to win 90% of the Black vote. He's looking at what are interesting cleavages and divides within that population, and this is one of them.
Yeah, you're not allowed to tell them that on CNN.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how she takes offense on his behalf.
And he could not have made it more clear that he is not making that case, but he is doing what presumably you would want from someone on that panel who's actually Black, unlike yourself, to share their knowledge and insight and explain why this could actually benefit him in ways that might not be obvious to white people who don't know anything about that conversation. Isn't that why you'd want him there?
Exactly. Isn't that why you have a panel discussion about the issue, to actually delve into it? And he said, ultimately, he said what I said. His take overall is that, it's a stupid thing to talk about. It's less than 3 months till November. Got to stay on message now, but this is not as damaging. This isn't going to drive his negatives through the roof for reasons I'm about to explain to you. As a non-white person, I have some insight I could bring to this. Well, you said, what do you say? I mean, the panic is just, it's incredible. They didn't want to even talk about it.
Yeah, they do not even put up the pretense that they are there to do what ostensibly is their job, to inform. They at this point, Taibbi, I used a little bit of his article on the UK thing. He's written a lot about this, how when the news decided that after Donald Trump got elected, that they are the press in 1930s Germany and it's their responsibility to prevent the rise of Hitler, it destroyed the entire credibility of the news industry, such as it was at that point. It wasn't great by then, but now it's just fallen through the basement because of course that's led to a place where all pretense of not being partisan has gone out the window. Most people in this country are not dyed-in-the-wool doctrinaire, vote blue no matter who Democrats. So you've lost almost everybody by taking that turn, almost the entire country that theoretically your job is to inform. You can't do that job when you pick a side.
Right. Exactly. All right. Hey, I got an idea. I know what we can do. We can do this for the next show. We'll just use Jake's app if this is not working. And maybe I can have Jake do an app for Super Chat. So we could just use Jake's app for Super Chats and Rumble Rants. And that'll be that's a fix.
Oh, and if we can get a royalty for that invention out of Rumble.
Yeah, there you go.
A win-win.
There you go. Beautiful. Eric Rousseau says, I watch every show Sparky listed, plus Caitlin Johnstone, Galloway, New Atlas, and Midwestern Marks, but I'm old, disabled, and don't work. You got some time there. Well, we appreciate you adding us to your rotation, Eric, as always. Golden Gun, I like this one. Russell will like this one. Russ, I expect to see a hooker laying on a bearskin rug in the background for Sunday's show. Yeah. Bring it back for New Hampshire. Thank you very much for that. It's very kind of you. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good. I think that I'm liking that. I'm liking the idea of that app.
I like that idea too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the hooker on the bearskin rug.
Oh, well, I mean, that's for you. I mean, that's up to you. Whatever floats your boat, my friend.
Yeah.
Dodger 12. I went to my local Iraqi market bakery today, asked Trump or Harris. We all had a jolly good laugh. Happy birthday, Russ. Thank you, Dodger 12.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Sparky, for $10, says, I often listen to geopolitical podcasts and vidcasts while otherwise engaged. Maybe while grading a road with my tractor, mowing the lawn, hiking, or fishing from my boat. Correction, you can eschew MSM. Okay, so you listen in the background. That's good. I used to do that, too. I used to work from home, and I used to just, have all this stuff on in the background while I did it. Arcana Soul, thanks for the $5. CNN literally unable to handle the idea that the subject of race is not, in fact, black and white. Yes, well put, Arcana Soul. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Also, says Arcana Soul, nothing raises my blood pressure more than someone who cannot separate I am aware of this idea from I'm here to support this idea. Well, thank you. And that's probably why you are a fan of ours, because that's a pet peeve of mine, too.
Yeah.
And, I knew we would get some. We get a lot of that. And I knew we would get a lot of this during election season because, we're not supporting anybody. We are post-duopoly, and I'm frankly unimpressed with the third party. So we're not even throwing our weight behind a third party candidate. But we do cover the election because it's important, and we analyze it, which I think we're pretty good at. I mean, we did predict Biden would be off the ballot a year ago. So, some of this analysis sometimes gets mistaken for because I think Tim Walz was the best pick. That means I'm supporting Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, and that's not true. We're calling it as we see it, as they say. Balls and strikes, right? Old-time hockey, as Russell says.
Exactly, old-time hockey. Do you know what that's from?
No. But I know it from you because you've been saying it for a while.
That's from Slapshot.
Nice. Sparky, thanks for the $5. I couldn't help but notice that Russell failed to mention that his Haitian girlfriend was none other than Karine Jean-Pierre. Yeah, right. He turned her. Yeah.
No, I mean, I was totally unprepared for that reaction that I was going to get pushed back in Harlem. That hadn't even occurred to me. But that was where I got it. Man, these freaking white libs downtown aren't going to be like, what are you two doing together?
Yeah, right.
But I would get it uptown. Yeah, like, oh, she's got him wrapped around her finger. They'd be saying, like, old ladies be saying that to us. Like I could feel up there like a resentment of it that I didn't feel downtown.
Interesting. Landrew for $100. Thank you, Landrew. Okay, you decide. Keaton/Russell or Russell/Keaton as my vote. Free Palestine. Write in Russell as the president and me as the vice president. I think that's fair. He's older. He has more experience,
Yeah,
He's more experienced.
I have the hair.
Yeah. And plus, then in 8 years, I could take over. So write in Russell Keaton. There you go.
Might I suggest my candidate, Dave Chappelle?
There you go.
Yeah, we have, and maybe we'll bring somebody on. I keep not wanting to because ever since we had Jordan on and we basically like freaking, did a world wrestling thing, we just smashed a chair over his head as soon as he got in the ring and just double teamed the guy.
Right.
I felt terrible about it. I said, we will never have anybody on again that where we feel like that's the only path.
Right.
So we get people from the Green Party asking to come on, and that's why I'm resistant to it. It's like, yo, man, we know people who volunteered for the Green Party in New York. It was a shit show.
Yeah.
It was a shit show. It wasn't
My
just
father
the
started
rules.
the Mid-Hudson Valley chapter of the Green Party in New York and quit a couple
Yeah.
weeks in because it was a shit show.
Yeah, exactly, man. Look, LaRouche, you can't say the establishment hates them less than
Right,
the Greens.
right.
They probably hate them more.
Right.
They were able to clear that bar, and the
Right.
Greens couldn't. And we said from the beginning, we didn't feel like it was an efficient together organization. And hey, man, the proof is in the pudding. Marcus Aurelius, how do you know a thing? By what it does. What do the Greens do? They fuck up and they lose. And yeah, the system is rigged. You know how rigged it is? I think they let the Green Party exist to draw off the malcontents who otherwise might devote their energy to something effective. I honestly, at this point, when you look at the history, Fred Hampton and MK Ultra and infiltration of left organizations that are effective, the Black Panthers, any effective left outside organization, the intelligence services have destroyed. It keeps reminding me of the old Dennis Leary joke where he said, they killed John Kennedy, they kill Robert Kennedy, they get to Ted Kennedy, they say, leave him alone. That's how I feel about the Green Party. The CIA got rid of all these other organizations. The Green Party, they said, we need someplace to put these people. And I'm not saying that's conscious. I'm not saying they are thinking of themselves that way. I'm saying, in effect, that is the function they serve, and that is why they have not been destroyed by the deep state. That's why they let them be out there.
And having said all that, I still say I would vote for Jill Stein if I could. And actually, if it gets the Green Party people to stop harassing us, I'll write her in. I'll promise that. I'll just say, listen, you want me to write her in? I'll do it. If it would get you guys to stop bothering me, I will write in Jill Stein. How's that? Can we make a deal?
I mean, that's another thing. Some people are talking about it in the chat. Yeah, man. I mean, they're all on board with a lot of culture stuff that is very counterproductive if you're trying to build a working class movement. I will just leave that there. You know what I'm talking about.
Bonzo Beans, I want in on that sweet sparky gravy train. DM me. There you go. Let's see. Eric Rousseau says the bear skin was definitely for the RFK signature bear skin condoms. There you go. Thank you, Eric Rousseau. Appreciate that. I like this. This is a funny one. His Highness, if you do use Jake's app going forward, can you ask him to fix it so it shows all 200 characters on Rumble? There's nothing more frustrating than writing a long post and it gets cut up. Oh, there you go. I see what you did there. Very, 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 very clever, His Highness. Appreciate that. Let's see here. What Soup says I'm pretty good at digging things out via internet search. That said, I have not been able to find video of one single interview or speech by Kamala's father, Donald Harris. I find this very suspicious. I've seen a couple of videos on Twitter. Maybe look around. I think I have seen a couple of things. Okay. All right, folks. So our next segment is a pre-recorded interview, and we are very excited to show this to you guys because our friend Omali Yeshitela and two of his associates are facing trial in September. On September 3rd, the African People's Socialist Party is being dragged into court on Russiagate charges, and they are less than a month away from going to trial. And so it is urgent now that we all get involved and support them in ways that are outlined in this interview, which I recorded yesterday with Penny Hess, who is one of those under indictment, and their lawyer, Leonard Goodman. So this is about a 28-minute interview that I recorded with them yesterday, but that I wanted to premiere as part of this stream because this is a very important video and a very urgent call to action. This is, of course, a very consequential free speech case that is coming up. And as they say in the interview, to my surprise, the government is prepared for this trial to last for weeks. They are going to bring people in to talk about the history of the Soviet Union and the threat that the Soviet Union posed to America. Like, it is going to be a weeks-long propaganda course masquerading as a criminal trial. And so this was an interview that I recorded yesterday while Russell was on the airplane heading out to Boston to visit his friend. So we are going to mute up and full screen this, and we'll see you back here.
And after the interview, we still have the UK riots.
Oh, yeah.
And the plummeting stock market.
Plenty of show left, folks. Absolutely. So we're going to full screen this, and we will be back in a little while. Enjoy this interview. Okay, here we go. Starting right now. We are here. Alrighty, everybody. We are here today with two very special guests. One is Penny Hess. She is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, the solidarity component of the African People's Socialist Party, leading the movement for white solidarity with black power and reparations under the leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who we had the great pleasure and honor of interviewing just a few weeks back, and attorney Leonard Goodman, who is a criminal law attorney based in Chicago. Leonard and Penny, thank you guys both very much for being here today.
Glad to be here, Keaton.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Of course, it was a great pleasure to interview Omali. That was probably about a month and a half ago by now, if my memory serves me right. He's a fascinating guy. You guys are just a really fascinating organization. You know, you remind me and my co-host Russell, who's flying right now. Otherwise, he'd be here with me. His flight got pushed back a few hours, so he couldn't make this. He was supposed to have landed by now, but he has not left the airport. That's the state of American capitalism, right? When you try to get on a Boeing airplane, right? But we were both just in awe of the Uhuru movement as a representation of left success in America, a left that has actually built itself and has sustained itself. And that strikes me and my partner, I know I could speak for him, as a major reason why Uhuru is under attack right now. So before we go any further, do you want to explain just the nuts and bolts of this case? What is going on? Obviously, a trial is coming up in less than a month, September 3rd. And this is a home stretch push to raise as much awareness about this and generate as much action around it. So before we go any further, what is the case? What are the charges?
Well, they're, as you say, this group has been around since the 70s. They are, left black radicals, I guess you could say. Penny can describe it better, but the charges are, it's an obscure charge that they are secret Russian agents operating in the U.S. Now, they've been around since the 70s. Their positions have not changed. They're anti-colonialists, they're leftists, they're anti-war. They've always been an international organization. It's in their platform. They seek international allies. Penny, again, can tell you better than me. They've been to many countries and allied with foreign nationals in Ireland, all over Africa, in Spain, and in Russia. And this wasn't a problem until the spring of 2022, when they were speaking out against the support for fueling the war in Ukraine. They were contradicting the narrative, the official narrative, that this was an unprovoked invasion. And Omali was giving speeches saying, that this was provoked, that NATO, and these are speeches that he'd been giving for decades about NATO expansion. They had been criticized the coup in 2014 at the time in Ukraine, where they replaced a Russia-friendly president with a NATO-friendly president, and the arming of Ukraine and the dangerous provocation. So they've been out there doing that. It wasn't a problem until the spring of 2022, after Russia invaded Ukraine, and then it was a problem. And then in July, Penny, again, can just tell you what happened, but they were raided by FBI SWAT teams. Their homes, their offices, all their files were seized. And it was a quite violent raid. So that's basically where we're at. We're set for trial September 3rd under this obscure statute, which is meant to target secret foreign agents, foreign operatives that are operating in the U.S. It's been used rarely, and it's a very dangerous case. It seems to be a direct assault on our rights of dissent, and sort of upping the scale a little bit from censorship to actual prosecution of activists.
Penny, you have anything to add to that?
Well, I do think that, first of all, I want to thank you for having us on, and I want to salute Attorney Goodman, who is just an amazing, brilliant legal expert on the First Amendment, and our legal team, you know, who are just a fantastic legal team that's going to win and take this on. And of course, I want to salute Chairman O'Malley Shatella, who is my leadership, who has given so much political and historical context to this case, because this case is a continuation, if you will, of the kind of attacks on the Black liberation movement of the 1960s, something that was known as COINTELPRO, for one, that included at that time the assassinations of Fred Hampton, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, infiltration into Black organizations. And it came about as a response to the struggle of Black people, or African people, as the African People's Socialist Party says, that was fighting for political and economic power over their lives, going beyond the question of racism, but the question of power, which is actually what the African People's Socialist Party has always worked for. It has always said that it's not enough to just take on the ideas in white people's heads, but that African people had a right to have power over their lives to make sure that nobody with bad ideas in their heads could ever hurt Black people again. And they also, work with African people all around the world as one people, and want to see the liberation of Africa as the birthright of African people, which is still very colonized today. So it's a very important, critical worldwide movement.
Well, you mentioned Fred Hampton and the Black Power movements of the past, and one of the things I remember we brought up with O'Malley, and it seems even more morbid to put it this way, that because he's not here, but part of the reason why he's such a rarity, such a unique figure, is because a lot of people who came up with him are dead.
That's so right. That is so right. And just to say that one of the things that Chairman O'Malley Shatella did was create a white solidarity committee with the mandate to go into the white community, to organize other white people, to first of all, just recognize the conditions that Black people or African people live in inside this country, and to stand in solidarity with Africans all around the world, with the Palestinian people, with the indigenous people here, and to recognize that this question of colonialism, the fact that white people sit on a pedestal and have resources, and even generally the opportunity to experience democratic rights, comes at the expense of the taking away of rights of so many other people around the world. And I think it's really important for us as white people to recognize this when we see the struggle in the world today. I mean, every place is a hot spot, and certainly the heroic Palestinian people have just been, amazing in making the struggle that they are taking on right now. But this is the question, and where do we stand? And this is why the question of reparations has always been critical to what the White Solidarity Committee has always put out in the white community. Reparations are owed to African people, and the party started putting that out in the early 1980s. before anybody even knew what that word meant. And now, we see it everywhere. The question of reparations is a mass demand. And, there's stolen labor, stolen resources, things like Tulsa, Oklahoma, the burning of a whole city, and, just so many examples of just terror and theft and oppression of the Black community in this country right here, that we have to recognize that. And that's why we fight for reparations to the African community as justice. This is what is owed.
Okay, well, now we're going to get into what we call in the business the call to action. So this is some material that you guys sent over. We're happy to put this up on the screen here. All out to St. Petersburg, Florida, this Freedom Summer. So I'm going to read a little bit from this press release that you guys sent. On July 29th, 2022, the U.S. government initiated violent military-style assaults on 7 offices and homes of the African People's Socialist Party and Uhuru movement in 2 cities and states, St. Louis, Missouri, and St. Petersburg, Florida. 9 months later, 3 members of the Uhuru movement, African People's Socialist Party Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Penny Hess, who's of course here with us now, and Jesse Novell, 2 white leaders of the party's Solidarity Front, were indicted under charges of being Russian agents. This is one way the colonial government is attempting to stifle any criticism of the U.S. for its ongoing mistreatment of African people within this country. It is also a way to muzzle our criticism of the bloody war the U.S. and NATO is making against Russia in Ukraine. It is also an attempt to quell our participation in elections as a means to change our conditions. With Freedom Summer, we will do everything necessary to bring our people and others back into active political life in defense of our rights to organize and speak out for the freedom of speech, to advocate and organize for our total liberation from colonialism based on the Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution. The Uhuru Three have an extraordinary team of lawyers that is quite capable of defeating the colonizers in court based on their own law. But this is a political case where the state uses the law as cover for lawlessness by the colonizers. In order to win, our lawyers must be armed with the obvious political support of masses of Africans and others whose participation exposes to the state that we know who the real criminals are. We must put the state in a position that every effort made to railroad the Uhuru Three by targeting constitutionally protected speech and actions exposes the rot of the system and deepens the crisis that has already driven it to frenzy. And there are a couple different events that we're going to highlight in a moment, but I want to ask Leonard here, this statement here, this is a political case where the state uses the law as cover for lawlessness by the colonizers. Leonard, I assume you did not write this, but I assume that you agree with that. So do you want to give your legal opinion on the significance of that framing?
Well, what I'll say is I've never seen another case like this where the indictment, the overt acts in the indictment are political speech. Every single overt act that's charged against my client and her colleagues they gave a speech, they published an article, they opposed the war, they held a rally. So I've never seen anything like that. And I think the other shocking thing is that despite this attack on the First Amendment, and really what this is, I would say this is the government trying to create a Russia exception to the First Amendment. I know we used to talk about in the business criminal law that there used to be a drug exception to the Fourth Amendment. They're looking for a Russia exception to the First Amendment, and it's incredibly dangerous. And despite that, we've had almost zero coverage in the mainstream press. So I want to salute Due Dissidents, Keaton and Russell for giving coverage to this case. And it's really relied on alternative media. And thank you to them. You know, we've had, if it wasn't for alternative media, we'd have no coverage at all. So thank you.
Also, I mean, yes, it's obviously a great honor to be able to, chip in however we can to help you guys through this. But someone with far greater reach than us is Tucker Carlson, who interviewed Omali Yeshitela. And then, as if that wasn't that didn't give him a big enough platform, he spent a good deal of his time on the Joe Rogan podcast talking about this as well, which gets exponentially even further reach on top of that. So what has been, and forgive me if this is getting a bit sidetracked, but what is your reaction to that? Because a guy like Tucker is so commonly associated with the right, and yet he is really the only mainstream media figure. Not that he's on TV anymore, but he's still mainstream in the sense that he has a huge reach. To give this any real airtime and to actually advocate for the principle of free speech. I mean, he himself is more aligned with O'Malley in terms of the specific issue at hand being the Ukraine war. But generally speaking, he's not an African socialist, to put it mildly.
Right.
Well, I mean, as you've talked about, Pete, I mean, what is left and right anymore? I used to consider myself a Democrat when the Democrats were anti-war, pro-healthcare, pro-free speech. Now Democrats are pro-censorship, pro-war, and they oppose national healthcare. So I don't know, I don't know who's on the left and who's on the right, but if people are willing to explore the truth and not side with one party or another, or become beholden to corporate sponsors, then I think people can open their eyes and see the truth. And I think that's, that to me is what media is about.
Yeah. So. I think that I agree with you, Attorney Goodman. And I just think that, Tucker Carlson is part of a movement of people who believe in the First Amendment. Right. They believe in free speech. And he said, I can't say I agree with Chairman O'Malley Shatella, but I will defend his right to speak. And that is what is being asked for here, not that somebody would become an African internationalist or join the Uhuru movement, but defend this right of African people to have what the chairman calls anti-colonial free speech, not just free speech for some at the expense of others. And I think that it's very interesting, and indeed, that Tucker Carlson and others from that sector across this political spectrum have been able to support Chairman O'Malley Shatella. So we have to fight for this right, this First Amendment that we're supposed to have.
Yeah, and I think we also have free speech in this country up until a point. You're allowed to say whatever you want. If you want to talk baseball, if you want to talk movies and show business, if you want to talk politics to a certain extent, as long as you stay within that Overton window, yeah, you can speak, as long as your speech doesn't have too much influence in ways that powerful people don't want it to. And that is, I think, a big part of this case is that, the African People's Socialist Party was among the first organizations to really step on this third rail after February of 2022 and say that this Ukraine war was provoked. We were not on YouTube at the time, but we were sort of, in the podcasting space, we were aware of things. The same thing, whether it was an event like January 6th, an event like COVID or the Ukraine war, or since then, obviously, October 7th, immediately after a major event, there is a blitz of very draconian censorship that follows in the immediate short term after something. And then it somewhat loosens up over time as the truth gets out there, because they always want to censor the truth about these things. They don't want to censor the crackpots. The crackpots are no threat to anybody. People who tell the truth are the ones who are a threat. They're the ones who they censor. And that's what happened here. And I think a big part of this is that the African People's Socialist Party were among the first to speak out about this at a time when it was especially dangerous to do so.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And again, that is the consistent history of the African People's Socialist Party all the way back after September 11th in 2000.
Well, yeah, obviously, yes.
Yeah, the party took a stand that, no, you can't invade Afghanistan. This is not an excuse to invade Afghanistan or Iraq. Right. And I took that stand very, very powerfully at that time, and which was not the popular stand in the world. And this is just how, this is always how it's been, because the African People's Socialist Party upholds the right of oppressed and colonized people, and anybody who is a victim of U.S. imperialism and imperialist war to have self-determination and the right to be free and self-determining.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the point that you made about telling the truth in real time when it could make a difference, because, it's okay now to say, yeah, there were no weapons of mass destruction. That was a lie. It's okay now to even say that, the CIA helped overthrow the elected president of Iran in 1953 or 55. It's okay to say that. In fact, it was admitted decades later. But at the time when it actually could have made a difference in terms of our relations with Iran, you can't say it. And I think that's also something that was so dangerous about Julian Assange, is that he was reporting indisputable facts, documented facts in real time when people could actually take action. So to me, that's really the critical thing, is the timing of this, the fact that, they were out there early in February of 2022. And next thing you know, a SWAT team shows up at their homes and their businesses.
Right. So we have a couple of different events that we definitely want to plug here. The political prosecution of the Uhuru 3, the First Amendment, on trial on Wednesday, August 21st, 7 p.m. Eastern. You guys are having a Zoom call. O'Malley will be on there. Penny, Leonard, you'll be on there too, with a host of others. So people can register for that at handsoffuhuru.org/legal. And then you obviously have an in-the-street action here. Hands off Chairman O'Malley Yeshitela dropped the charges on the Uhuru 3 Saturday, August 31st at 11 a.m. And this is at the Uhuru House in 1245 18th Avenue South, St. Petersburg, Florida. So what is the importance of people getting involved in attending really both of these events, if possible? What is the urgency of these actions? You could take them in either order.
Just to say thank you so much for putting these out. The only way that we can win is to show the support from the hundreds of organizations that have come out to support, in many ways over the last 2 years, the Uhuru movement and the Hands Off Uhuru organization, and to show people in the street, to show the state, look, they can't railroad and use these obscure laws or, usage of the laws to frame up the leader of the Black liberation movement. They can't do that. And so we're calling on All Out August 31st in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's the weekend before the trial starts, which is in the Middle District of Tampa, Florida, in federal court on beginning Tuesday, September 3rd, Tuesday, September 3rd, right after Labor Day. And, this is a mass mobilization, all out August 31st at the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is right across the bridge from Tampa. So go to handsoffuhuru.org, find out more about this. You can see all the various motions and the indictment and all the webinars that we've done. And you can, people can contribute if they want. And just learn everything that you need, handsoffuhuru.org. Come to Florida, come to St. Petersburg, August 31st, join this rally and be at the trial September 3rd in Tampa.
Leonard, as someone who, spends time inside the courtroom, can you offer any insight as to what the scene outside the courtroom in the streets really means? Because I think a lot of people want to protest, they want to go make their voices heard, but they're afraid that, hey, no matter how many people there are outside, the judge is going to do what they're going to do. The system is going to operate as planned inside. We sent Russell to London to cover the Day X hearings, where Julian Assange was able to buy himself enough time to eventually strike this plea deal. And those activists said that the people out in the streets made a big difference. Mm-hmm. So as a lawyer who fights in the courtroom, what is the impact of the outside activism? What impact does that have inside the courtroom, if at all?
Well, lawyers are trained to fight cases in the courtroom. So, I'm not an expert on this, but what I'll say is that when you battle the federal government, they have unlimited resources. And so showing support, having supporters on your side, I think is really important. And, even this case, we're going to be on trial for a month, probably in September. I mean, this is a huge burden. I'm fortunate that I'm able to do it. And, it's important to me. It's an important case, but, most lawyers can't take a month to try a case in Florida. So,
why are you not to interrupt, but why are you anticipating it going that long?
That's what the government said. They said they're going to put on 3 weeks of evidence. I mean, I don't know what they're going to put on because, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think they're going to call, they're going to try to put in conversations that they intercepted, from the cloud between certain Russians that have nothing to do with our client, and try to get them in and try to get the judge to allow this in that has nothing to do with us.
Rachel Maddow will have to take the stand.
Maybe
she could probably get it through a couple days right there.
They have 2 experts that they want to call Russia experts to basically talk about how Russia is an authoritarian state, and
in the Soviet Union, right? They want
to give the history of the Soviet Union and their intelligence agencies, and they want to basically, it's fear mongering, and they want to say that if you associate with Russia, you're endangering the security of the United States. That's basically amazing. The message.
Wow.
Now that's all going to be litigated in the next couple of weeks with the judge. So we're hoping we have a very good judge. And I think the judge is not going to allow a lot of this stuff, but, we'll see. There's also a motion to dismiss pending that's not yet decided that basically says you can't prosecute people for political speech. And there's a lot of Supreme Court law that supports that. So, that is still pending. The judge hasn't decided. He told us to get ready for trial, but he still hasn't ruled on that motion. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but the government does predict that their case is they're going to put on 3 weeks worth of evidence.
That's just amazing. So you've been informed by the prosecutors that they intend to basically do a 3-week course in anti-communism, basically. I mean, we're cutting through the bullshit, right?
Yeah,
that's basically what it is. As evidence in a criminal trial?
We'll see
they
what
have
they
no evidence.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
There's no evidence that these folks are agents of Russia.
That's unbelievable.
Their relationship with Russian nationalists, the same in their relationship with nationals anywhere. They ally on certain issues. They disagree on other issues. There's no evidence that they're agents or that they're taking orders. And the statute requires proof that they're under the direction and control of the government of Russia.
Wow.
It's absurd. So
it's ridiculous. And it's also racist that it's saying that Black people can't determine what the reality they face, that they don't have the ability to sum it up and fight against it. They need a Russian to tell them.
Well,
it's really.
I can't speak to that, but they've been saying the same thing since O'Malley's been saying the same thing since the 70s. He was part of the SNCC movement, and so I don't know how all of a sudden you can be speaking for Russia when you're saying the same thing you've been saying for decades. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's going to make sense to a jury, but that's our fight that we're going to be in starting September 3rd in Tampa.
All right. Well, the 2 events here, we want to plug again the Zoom call. You can register at handsoffuhuru.org/legal. That's virtual. Anybody can sign on from anywhere. And then obviously the street action, August 31st at 11 a.m. In St. Petersburg at the Uhuru House.
Yes.
Those are urgent there, so make sure you can participate in both of them if you can, and no matter what, at least be on that Zoom call, which you could sign into, I should say, from anywhere in the world. And like I said, once again, I am flabbergasted to hear that this is going to be a weeks-long trial. But given that, whoever has time, if you do, if you don't, I understand. But if anybody would like to come on during the trial and give us an update on how things are going, if you're at liberty to do so. I don't know how that works. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a simple country podcaster here. But our door is always open to you guys. So Penny Hess, Leonard Goodman, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you so
pleasure.
much.
Right.
It was a pleasure.
All right, folks, that was our interview with Penny Hess and Lenny Goodman. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That'll be available in clip form later this evening. But serious stuff. And so we hope you guys can get involved in that. Those two call to actions there, quite important. All right, let's move on. We got plenty more stuff.
That's insane.
Yeah,
that's insane.
crazy.
It's insane that they even brought the charges, much less that they're going to follow through with a 3-week trial, litigating Russia bad.
Yeah, Russia bad. Exactly.
3 weeks of the long dead USSR being litigated. It's insane.
Pretty crazy stuff. And we will be in touch with the Uhuru movement throughout this process. J.K. Michael, Chappelle Rogan, that's my vote. There you go. Good call. Watt Soup, Jill Stein supports under 18-year-olds receiving gender transition treatments in the form of puberty blockers and hormone therapy. Thank you, Watt Soup. Scutch, the dump I took this morning will have more effect upon U.S. policy than all the votes in this upcoming election. Yeah, that is unfortunately
that is very true. Very true.
Kenman G, Rayhan Salam was on point here. Normally he is, where is it? Excuse me. Normally he's a neoconservative scumbag Zionist. Thank you for that, Kenman G. Yeah, his politics are kind of lousy. He's a young guy. I didn't realize he's only 44 still. The guy's been around forever. The guy got started really young, I guess. Okay, we'll take some super chats here. Mike T, thanks for the $6.99, says, is it me or did she not want to perpetuate that one drop rule? Not racist at all. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Interracial dating can be tricky. An Irish girl I'd been with before caught me with a white girl at a party, so she put a cigarette out in my eye. Ooh, absolutely.
Wow.
Sparky also says, known about the persecution of Uhuru for a while. It's beyond ridiculous. Yes. 100%. And so those calls to action were in there, and they will be in clip form later on. Okay, Russell, we got 2 more segments here to do before we close the lights on today's stream. So go ahead.
All right, we'll start with the UK.
No, let's do the markets first.
All right, closing out with race riots. Yay. Okay, so no, hang on, where is it? There we go. I got it. All right, so our illustrious former president Donald Trump wasted no time getting back on message. I think he's been watching our show.
Yes,
I think that shit post from Keaton made a big impact on him, and he is trying to get back on message. So let's take a look at this campaign ad that they cut in response to the market collapsing over the last few days.
Disappointing July jobs report.
Bidenomics is working.
A rise like that is historically a sign that a recession is imminent.
This is Bidenomics.
What you're seeing right now, the stock market, is what Americans have been feeling for the last 3 years. It's just a manifestation of it right now.
All that is called Bidenomics.
All right. And by the way, when did she become black? They cut that part.
Yeah, they cut that. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what the hell is going on? Now, the markets, as I kind of thought would probably happen, they're up a little bit today. A lot of people in the market will call that a dead cat bounce. It means you have a tremendous drop, and you get a little bit of a bounce. And then that doesn't mean the trajectory is going to change. Certainly, the markets are not up today by anything in comparison to what they've been losing lately. So we're going to take a look at a couple of different perspectives here. And what's been happening. A sudden global panic is upending financial markets and cratering the value of stocks, currencies, even Bitcoin. But economists say it's not a surefire sign that the country is headed for a downturn. The current sell-off, they say, is the result of investors having to untangle complicated, heavily leveraged trades that have artificially boosted stock values. A weak snapshot of the U.S. job market Friday added fuel to the fire, raising questions about whether the American economy is on rockier footing than previously thought, and prompting bets that the Federal Reserve might have to cut interest rates sooner and more aggressively. For anyone who doesn't know, the Fed has been keeping rates not really high in a historical context, but high relative to the very low interest rate policy of the last 25 years
Right.
in an effort to crush inflation. The theory being if you raise interest rates, it'll slow business activity. People don't borrow as much money. It's just trying to cool off the economy. All three major stock indexes were down significantly Monday morning by as much as 4% as investors moved money out of equities and into bonds. Bonds are perceived as usually being a safer haven. Global markets were also reeling, with Japan's Nikkei 225 plunging 12%, its largest one-day drop in nearly 40 years, after an interest rate hike by the Bank of Japan last week. Although there's a chance the turbulence could lead to a self-fulfilling economic slowdown, analysts and economists say it's too soon to panic. The economy, by most measures, is still in solid shape. Americans are continuing to spend, and the stock market remains near the all-time highs it set recently. So this gives you some perspective on the year relative to the last week. So yeah, the stock market was up over 20%. It's still up pretty high. You have the Dow is still up 5%, and NASDAQ and the S&P are still up 12% even after this drop. Quote, "This is not the recession train. It's just a good old-fashioned market panic," said Joe Brusuelas, principal and chief economist for RSM-US. Quote, "This is not a DC-inspired event about a slowing job market or the Fed being behind the curve. It's about a larger regime change where investors are adjusting to the end of easy money globally." That, I mean, the problem with that thesis to me is the Fed raised the rates. God, it's got to be like 2 to 3 years now. So why now? Japan for years has kept interest rates negative, making it attractive to borrow money against the yen to invest in higher yielding assets such as tech stocks. But the Bank of Japan last week raised interest rates to 0.25% and suggested that it would continue doing so, causing the yen's value to spike against the dollar and sending ripples throughout the global economy. Most immediately, that has led to a sell-off of tech and artificial intelligence stocks, including darlings such as Apple and Nvidia, though analysts say it does not come entirely as a surprise, given repeated warnings about bloated valuations well before the Japanese central bank's move. Fresh data last week showed U.S. employers added 114,000 jobs in July, far fewer than expected. The unemployment rate, meanwhile, rose to 4.3%, its highest level in nearly 3 years, raising urgent questions about whether the Fed was keeping undue pressure on the economy and waiting too long to take its foot off the brakes. The central bank last week decided to leave rates unchanged, saying it needed just a bit more time to see inflation keep falling before officials bring borrowing costs down from their highest level in 23 years. The overwhelming expectation then was that the Fed would finally cut rates at its next meeting in September once central bankers were confident that inflation was on a reliable path down. There's no meeting scheduled for August. Now we're going to take a look at another perspective, but this really shows you the disconnect between the stock market at this point and the real economy. Do you feel like the economy is doing well? Do you feel like things
Right.
are good? They measure everything in terms of how is the investor class doing. Now that having been said, um, they really seem to be propagandizing the idea, and you'll see that from the next article. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. No recession. All the fundamentals are good. And you might remember these same media outlets and these same analysts and these same consultants and these same money managers were all telling you that right up until the 2008 crash. Most famously, Jim Cramer. Don't sell Bear Stearns. You're being silly. Don't be silly. Right? A few days before the whole company just completely collapsed. So there's only so seriously you could take outlets like this, like the Washington Post. AI, it does look like people got out ahead on AI, but maybe not, as we'll see in the next exhibit. Anything, Keaton?
No, I mean, I just noticed that yesterday this was a huge, I mean, this was the trending story yesterday morning. I mean, you could not get away from this. And so there was definitely a panic. And it seems like, there's the spin on both sides going on.
Yes. They're always eager to say nothing to see here within outlets like the Washington Post.
Right.
Now, one of the reasons I look at the financial press is that's kind of like looking at the racing forums. These are degenerate gamblers who look at Market Watch and CNBC and the Wall Street Journal. They don't care about Democrats. They don't care about Republicans. They don't care about spin. They care about making money off their bet. So perhaps CNBC has something a little closer to the truth. The U.S. may already be in a plain recession. Danielle DiMartino Booth. She is the CEO and chief strategist for Quill Intelligence and a former advisor to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. Tino Booth explained how a weakening job market and increasing Chapter 11 bankruptcy filings signal that the U.S. is already in a recession. She believes it started sometime around last October. Additionally, declining house prices and increasing apartment supply suggest this trend may continue, she said. Artificial intelligence is a key tool for employers looking to cut costs, with the highly regarded CFO survey from the first quarter of the year showing that nearly 60% of companies overall are using AI. Quote, America's chief financial officers, tasked as they are with controlling costs in an economic downturn, have clearly demonstrated that AI will become a mainstay as Chapter 1 of the rollout of this technology continues to play out, replacing warm bodies with technology. Currently, employers are adjusting as they discover how AI best fits into their business models. DiMartino Booth suggested that for the next 6 to 18 months, AI is going to feel like a weapon of mass destruction. Now, my money is on the degenerate gambler financial news site probably getting it right over the Washington Post, which told you nothing of those figures, right? They told you nothing of declining house prices. They told you nothing of increase in Chapter 11 bankruptcy filings. These are the things that if you're a degenerate gambler who makes your money off of placing bets on how the economy is going to go, you pay very keen attention to those things. If your job is to get the Democrats reelected, you're going to tend to downplay those things. So I'm going to tend towards the CNBC take that we may already be in a recession, and these increasing unemployment numbers are just the first indicators of that. Now, of course, you do have people who have been saying for a long time that we're in an everything bubble, that crypto, gold, stocks, real estate, that everything has been insanely inflated by literally decades of artificially low interest rates and monetary policy that really encouraged investment, and that's inflated all of these assets across the board. And of course, a lot of them have been calling for a just complete collapse in all asset classes. Is this the beginning of that? I can tell you, as somebody who does take in financial news, just like Kathleen Kennedy murdered Star Wars as a genre, the economy is going to collapse next week. You had better put your money in a mattress. That is a whole genre of financial reporting. There are constantly articles written with that theme, and it really doesn't mean anything. My experience, and I think that anyone, even if you don't follow this closely, has seen this. The Fed will always bail out the investors. They will always bail out the investors. So could the markets tank? Sure. I mean, they did during COVID, right? What happened? The Fed came right in and bailed them out. Yeah, it collapsed in 2008. What happened? The Fed came in and bailed them out. Now, what may be different now is we're living in a world of de-dollarization. And increasingly, you're starting to have an organized anti-U.S. front in the form of BRICS, really trying to take down the U.S. and its satellites as the governing power of the globe. And if you did have that kind of collapse, would they try to take financial warfare means to exacerbate the collapse of the American economy by, say, pulling all their money out of U.S. treasuries to exacerbate that collapse, to exacerbate the collapse of the dollar? Because the Fed's ability to just print money and bail out Wall Street is dependent on the dollar being the world's reserve currency. If that's not the case, their ability to bail out Wall Street becomes extremely limited. That having been said, as a matter of policy, we've seen it again and again. If this everything bubble were to collapse, the Fed will rush right in to prop it back up.
Yeah, and from a media standpoint, from, a sort of cover the Democrats' ass standpoint, just a brief bit of, fun fact history. In 2008, we think of that campaign between Obama and McCain as a landslide. McCain was actually winning until September 15th, until the financial crisis hit. And that is what turned it. And so, a crash, a downturn, something that is perceived as cataclysmic in that way, that would put the nail in the Kamala Harris campaign coffin. And so I do understand the spin to say it's nothing to see here. And I also understand, obviously, on the Trump campaign side, saying this is the Kamala crash, labeling that. All right. It's not a surprise but the respective camps have taken that tack. And obviously, outlets like the Washington Post may as well be in the Democratic Party. They may as well be on the Democrat Party payroll.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. And one last interesting point to make. Over the last couple of years, once the Fed went on this rate hike regime, any indicator that fed the perception that the economy was slowing led to a boom in the stock market, because that means they're going to cut rates.
Right.
This time it didn't work out that way for reasons nobody's quite sure of, but most people seem to think it's because it happened right at the same time as the Bank of Japan raising rates and made everybody panic all at once. But typically bad news for workers is good news for Wall Street, but they panicked this time.
Indeed. Well, in case there is an economic downturn on its way, we should probably try and sell some dog food. That's right. So, folks, did you know that our friends at Rumble started a little dog treat sort of mom and pop stand here? So do you rely on big woke corporations to keep you healthy? I hope not. I hope not. Then why would you
go in there to get your tonsils out? You leave without your testicles.
Yeah, exactly. So why then would you trust the same globally owned corporations to keep your pet healthy? It's time we stop relying on them for anything. They hate us. They want to keep us sick and just want our money. Not the CDC, though. We are still simulcasting here, Rumble, so I hope you won't mind if I advise all our viewers to check the CDC website for all the latest health guidance. But they don't advise in terms of pet nutrition, so we got that covered here. Because Rumble started Positive Health because pets are an extension of our family. That's true. We love our pets. And it matters that they get clean, nutrient-filled, vitamin-rich superfoods to stay healthy and happy. And so Rumble created a range of superfood supplement waffles that your pet will love, packed with natural, healthy ingredients that promote better digestive support, bone health, vision, and immune strength. They're also rich in anti-inflammatories, vitamins, and minerals essential for your furry family members. So
they're even
head
good for
over.
bears.
That's right. They're even good for bears in case RFK wants to take a live bear home. That's correct. So head over to positive.com right now to check out our superfoods and other products. You can do that by scanning that QR code. Also, use code STUDIO to save 15% on your first subscription order. And the link I just posted in the Rumble chat right there. So that is positive, some good unwoke dog treats there. So if your dog is tugging his dick between his back legs and growling at you when you call him good boy because he doesn't want you to assume his gender, you might need some of these waffles.
Pronouns.
Exactly. Exactly.
And actually, the film Cocaine Bear was inspired by a bear that got into a crate.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So head over to Positive. Some good free speech supporting dog treats there. Nutritious and delicious. There we go. Beautiful.
Screw that bear.
Yeah. Hope we nailed that. Hope we nailed that for you, Rumble. Hope we move some dog treats for you. Move some products. All right. Beautiful.
You take
All
the
right.
boy off the Lower East Side.
Yes, exactly. All right. I'm going to read some Rumble rants that I captured on my phone because over the course of that Uhuru interview, they timed out, which is something they got to fix here. Eric Rousseau says Karine Jean-Pierre gives me creepy Chucky doll vibes.
I can see that. I can see that. She does look like one of those like Todd McFarlane dolls you would get at Forbidden Planet.
There you go. That's right. Oh, no, never mind. We did all that. We're up to date on our Rumble rants. That's good. Dodger12, thanks for the $2 on YouTube. One drop rule, one drop per sugar cube, remember. Sparky, thanks for the $10. Uhuru are mostly elderly people engaging in subversive acts such as erecting basketball goals for neighborhood kids, mentoring them in a positive way, and cleaning up trash. That's right. They've done so much for their community. Absolutely. A good old-fashioned market panic, says Sparky, just like Grandma used to make. AH, thanks for the $4.99. Do you think the stock market decline was a message warning to politicians similar to Truss? I mean, look, some of that could have been that Kamala's gaining in the polls and the investors don't want her to win, so they're selling off. I think some of that could be there. I mean, I don't know.
I don't think so.
Salamander Fry, thanks for the $10. Appreciate you. And appreciate chat, too. Thank you very much. We appreciate you all. Thank you all for being here, folks. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. All right, we got one more piece for you before we close the lights on today's live stream. Please hit that like button. Please hit that follow button over on Rumble. Hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. That is all super important. Thank you guys very much for watching today. Program note, we will be off on Thursday. It's Russell's birthday tomorrow, and he's away, and I'm still on my modified paternity leave, so it's been a great pleasure sitting in today, but we will be off on Thursday morning, so no morning due. On Thursday. We have plenty of content that we'll be dropping as clips. We have a ton of clips that are backlogged, so we will get to all that. So you'll be seeing plenty of us in clip form before Sunday, but that will be our next live stream. Just a program note there. Thank you all very much. All right, we got one more piece. Let's make it happen.
All right, so, there's been a lot of talk for a long time in England. A lot of people in England say, why does the states get to have race riots? Why don't we have some race riots here?
Yeah.
So they decided to get some of them American-style race riots. As race riots escalate, British PM threatens dire consequences. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer condemned far-right rioting, which has seen gangs burn buildings, attack Muslims and ethnic minorities, and clash with police over the weekend. Speaking on Sunday, shortly after rioters attempted to set fire to a building with asylum seekers inside, Starmer said, quote, those who have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. The police will be making arrests. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, he said. All right-minded people should be condemning this sort of violence.
All right, before we go any further, I just want to say real quick, a little note here, because, I haven't paid as much attention to this story as I should. My attention is spread thin while the baby's here. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. But now that Tim Walz is the vice presidential candidate, a lot of the right-wing chuds are going to be attacking him over the Minneapolis George Floyd riots. If you're defending trying to set fire to a building with migrants inside, I don't hear a fucking word about Tim Walz and Minneapolis. Again, that's not an endorsement of Tim Walz. That's calling it as I see it. That's being fair. I don't want to hear their fucking bullshit about that if they will not condemn this.
Good point, Charles.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna look at a little video from the AP.
Criminal violence and disorder has no place on Britain's streets. We've been clear to the police that they have our full backing in taking the strongest possible action against perpetrators, including we're making sure that there are more prosecutors, there are sufficient prison places, and also that the courts stand ready, because anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
Stop their votes! Stop their votes!
Yeah, so pretty crazy stuff over there. Riots have taken place in towns and cities throughout the UK following false information spread online that the suspect in a knife attack on a children's dance class in Southport on Monday, in which 3 young girls were killed, was a Muslim migrant. On Tuesday, rioters descended on Southport and attacked a mosque, clashing with and injuring police officers. Authorities have since said the suspect in the Southport stabbing case, 17-year-old Axel Rudak Ubana, was born in Britain, but rioting and attacks on mosques and other buildings have continued. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said, quote, in light of the disgraceful threats and attacks that local mosques have also faced in many communities, the government is providing rapid additional support through the Protective Security for Mosques scheme, alongside the support from local police forces. Starmer, who only took office a month ago, will chair the government's main crisis committee known as Cobra Monday, as his Labour administration fights to regain control of the situation. There have been riots in Belfast in Northern Ireland, Bristol in southwest England, London in the southeast, and numerous towns and cities throughout the Midlands and north of England, such as Blackpool, Hull, Leeds, Manchester, Middlesbrough, Stoke-on-Trent, and Sunderland. Anti-racist groups have also mobilized, organizing counter-demonstrations in several towns. In Liverpool, police intervened to prevent clashes between far-right rioters and anti-fascists on Saturday. Later that day, rioters set a library on fire, burned books, and attempted to prevent firefighters from reaching the blaze, Merseyside police said. They made 23 arrests. Rioting took an even more sinister turn on Sunday in Rotherham, a town beset with racial tensions following a child sexual exploitation scandal and cover-up involving a gang of mostly British Pakistani men in the 2000s. Frankly, yes, that story was very covered up. I'm surprised they even mentioned it. Anti-immigration rioters broke into a hotel housing asylum seekers, attempted to set the building on fire, and blocked the exits. Police forced the rioters back, arresting one. Staff and residents were terrified but not injured, reported Sky News. Rioters, including children, attacked police, causing at least 10 injuries. Some wore face coverings, others wore England football shirts and carried British or English flags. A camera operator from French news service AFP was also attacked in the crowd. So before we continue, just some commentary on that. We've covered this. We actually covered the growing tension in a lot of Europe around immigration and migrants a couple of months ago, most recently in relation to what was going on in the French elections with Le Pen's party. This is very predictable. When you get a situation where people feel like their government is completely unresponsive to their concerns, generally speaking, the UK, it is, and we've covered this as well, it is very difficult for working people to survive there. Forget about buying a house for the most part, unless you're very upper income. It's hard to even pay rent. People are spending outrageous amounts of money just to survive, just to live. So environments like that are always a tinderbox. Then, ultimately, because of Western foreign policy, you are creating conditions in the homelands of millions of people that are forcing them, in order to stay alive, in order to keep their families alive, to flee. And the governments in these countries, many of which are responsible for the conditions in their home countries, are then putting them in hotels in a circumstance where people feel like their voices are not being heard. They're being economically neglected. And also, this is an element of human nature that people on the left are very uncomfortable talking about. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. People don't like when a large enough number of people to significantly affect the culture that you're accustomed to all come in at once and impact your environment. It's not a white thing. You send 100,000 Americans to a neighborhood in China. See how the people there like it. Send them to a town, a village in Africa. See how they like it. Now you could say that's terrible.
7 million Ashkenazi Jews to a certain Middle Eastern
country. See how they like it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. You're right.
I mean, I'm half kidding, because
there's an ethnic cleansing
there's a
element
different
there
dynamic
that you don't quite have.
Yeah.
But that's, you could say that's an ugly part of human nature, but it's not a white thing. It's a human nature thing. So what I'm saying is you had the conditions for this all in place, and all it takes when you've got a tinderbox like that, very much like George Floyd. Why the killing of George Floyd? There had been horrific crimes that had been on YouTube before that, but for whatever reason, the circumstances of the pandemic obviously supercharged it. But so very often that's what happens when you have a tinderbox. You don't know what's going to be the thing that really sets it on fire, but this was the thing. This misreporting about the murder of these girls, which turned out the initial perception this was a migrant who had come on a boat. None of that was true. But that's it. Now the fire is already ablaze, and you have a government that is not popular with the people, that is not well positioned to manage it. Now, I got to say, because we tend to think of travel alerts as something directed at those people, right, at the brown people. So it's very interesting seeing travel alerts being issued regarding the UK from Asian, mostly brown and Asian countries. 5 countries have now issued travel and safety warnings to their citizens as riots and street disorder continue in the UK. The United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, Malaysia, Indonesia, and even a Commonwealth country good standing, Australia, have since all warned their citizens living in or visiting the UK that parts of the country present safety risks at the current time. I think as Westerners who are used to seeing the people out there as the danger, this is the shape of things to come, where the rest of the world begins to tell their people, don't go to the West because you're going to be in danger there. Do you want to say anything before because this is getting into the freedom of speech and censorship issue.
Yeah, no, I mean,
obviously,
to try and set fire to a building with people in there is just
of
monstrous,
course.
and that is a line that was not crossed in the George Floyd protest. So I don't want to draw any sort of false equivalency there. There was a lot of property damage that happened in those riots. There was not an attempt to burn down a building with people inside it.
Yeah.
And that's obviously an act of terrorism.
That's incredible.
That's an act of terrorism. Yeah.
Remember, this is the country. I don't want to bash our British friends, but I remember that this was the book that inspired the not very good movie, Green Street Hooligans, I think it was called. But the book, it's actually a nonfiction book, Among the Thugs. It's very, very interesting to me because in America we get masterpiece theater, right? We get Monty Python. We get the best of British culture. So there's a whole side of England we don't see. The first time I went to England, it was 1990, and the World Cup was going on, and I was in a bar in Manchester for a game where England was playing Cameroon. And every time Cameroon got up to shoot, everyone started chanting monkey. And I was like, I never saw that on Masterpiece Theater. It seems I have been very naive about certain elements of British culture. That was when I kind of opened my eyes that this idea that America is the uniquely racist country and all these European countries are very enlightened, that all went out the window. So this was an undercurrent then, it's an undercurrent now. And Among the Thugs really gets into how the football hooligan thing, it was really, frustrated young men mourning the death of the British Empire, trying to assert this aggressive, hyper-masculine nationalism in the absence of worlds to conquer and lands to colonize, turning it into a football match. One of the things that, especially as an American, having all these perceptions of the British as being, let's face it, better than us, they talked about how British football people came to America to consult with the American football people to find out why nobody gouges anyone's eyes out at an American football match. Like, they couldn't conceive of it. Like, really? That never happens?
Right.
Completely the opposite, I think, of the way that we think about the British in relation to ourselves. Like, we're the uncivilized ones, right? They're the spot of tea people. But on another side of this story, there is a civil liberties question here. And, there are a lot of people who say that our Davos elites, our trilateral commission people, what have you, they want this as an excuse to impose censorious population controlling laws. They want to create the conditions that will allow them gain of the population. I can't say whether that's true, but it certainly seems to be having that effect. So there's Tommy Robinson, who, according to the reporting I've seen, I don't know him previously, but they identify him as a right-wing figure in the UK. Keir Starmer just made an address where he labels everyone upset about the murder of 3 little girls by Axel Maganwa Ruda Kubana as thugs and gives police more powers to prevent protests, even ushering in facial recognition to do so. All right, so this clip is really what went viral.
Same. Shared intelligence. Wider I can announce today that following this meeting, we will establish a national capability across police forces to tackle violent disorder. These thugs are mobile. They move from community to community, and we must have a policing response that can do the same. Shared intelligence, wider deployment of facial recognition technology, and preventative action, criminal behaviour orders, to restrict their movements before they can even board a train, in just the same way that we do with football hooligans. And let me also say to large social media companies and those who run them, violent disorder clearly whipped up online, that is also a crime. It's happening on your premises, and the law must be upheld everywhere. That is the single most important duty of government. Service rests on security, and we will take all necessary action to keep our streets safe.
All right. So our friend Matt Taibbi did an article really covering it from this angle. So we're just going to take a look at a little bit of that article, and I would highly recommend his site, Racket News. He always has good stuff on there. So pre-crime, for any Philip K. Dick fans, you'll remember the Minority Report. Of course, there's no excusing hurling bricks at a mosque, setting cars on fire, brawling with cops, or vandalizing stores. The police and the public have a clear interest in stopping this sort of behavior, and England doesn't exactly have a shortage of it. Quote, I'm going to say this to you on and off the record. The British hooligan is particularly stupid, is how Racket's own UK-bred attorney Rob Garson put it, noting an instance in which a pediatrician's home was attacked by rioters who reportedly didn't know the difference between a pedophile and a pediatrician. While the UK has a long way to go before approaching American levels of violence, we have 18 times England's murder rate, rising crime has led to discontent across the political and has inspired reforms that include some of the injunctive tools Starmer referenced in his speech. Starmer's quote, before they even board a train address is worrisome, as it comes in the context of a growing international movement to combine expanded definitions of incitement with preventive enforcement. Earlier this year, this site covered Canada's still pending Online Harms Act, which would create means for detaining people for crimes they haven't committed yet. Starmer's speech called for combining shared intelligence with existing tools like the above-mentioned Criminal Behavior Order, known as CRIMBOS, which replaced the Antisocial Behavior Order, or ASBO, in 2012, and laws restricting the movement of soccer hooligans. The ASBO-CRIMBO regime of prevention injunctions, ostensibly meant to be used to curb youth violence, was once criticized for being used against adults for everything from excessively loud sex to dogging. I looked up the definition. Dogging is going and having sex in a public place in a park. So it's kind of like the sex version of crowd. What's that called? Where the crowd all converges on a tweet.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
I forget the name, but yeah, a tweet goes out. Hey, we're all going to be fucking in Crocheron Park in an hour.
There you go.
Yeah. To singing Wonderwall and Faith too often for residents of a Birmingham housing complex. Now, apparently, Starmer wants to expand the concept in a more political direction. All right. So Schellenberger has warned about this quite a lot, that these countries are passing, that don't have a First Amendment, are passing these very censorious laws, and they're going to try to use it to limit speech everywhere in ways that will impact us. And a lot of this reporting, they're talking about Elon Musk and why X is allowing this content on their platform, which, as Taibbi points out in the article, well, we saw what the dangers of this are during COVID, because once you decide platforms are liable for misinformation, well, inherently, you're empowering the government to decide what that is. And we saw how good they are at that by a lot of things that they censored, de facto censored during COVID. So do you really want the government deciding what speech is disinformation? That's the regime that they're really trying to use this to ram through. And in the end, Australia floated the first test case where they tried to fine Elon Musk for keeping a video up. and credit where credit is due, he did not back down. And ultimately they did, but that was the first case like that. You see, the more things like this happen, and that's what I can't say that there's truly a plan. This is part of a plan, but I can't say it isn't, frankly, because it seems like conditions are so inevitably set to lead to incidents like this. And every time these incidents occur, there's never any accountability for what government policies created conditions. We're not in any way justifying these riots. It's horrific. Putting desperate people in a building to light them on fire.
No.
That's not what I'm saying, but I'm making a very cold analytical assessment of, if you put in this input, you're going to get that output. And really the art of governance is understanding that and avoiding inputs that will create those kinds of outputs. And they never examine that. It's misinformation, it's bad actors, it's that, and they want to turn it all into another way of further controlling the population rather than to alleviate the conditions that created these circumstances.
Of course, once you fuse violence and speech, there's no unfusing it, right?
Right.
Obviously, whoever engages in an act of violence like that should be in jail for life. But you cannot say that, well, your political speech online or anywhere else is what instigated that, unless you can very specifically and legally define what incitement of violence is. Now, we have those laws on the books here. We have a First Amendment here. When you don't have that, it becomes much grayer and it becomes much more dangerous, because we have the right to political speech here. So you can espouse a political view that does not make you liable for when a criminal goes and does something horrific or tries to do something horrific. If you don't have those lines very clearly marked in your legal framework or in your founding framework, then yes, it is a dangerous situation, as Taibbi writes, and as Michael Schellenberger has been reporting on for a long time now. All right. Let's go to some super chats here. Steve McNelly gave us $200. Thank you so much for that. I wish we could put it up on the screen. Like I said, our technical difficulties make it such that we cannot, but we will read it. Finally got to catch you both live to say your Star Wars clip, Russ, 100 for that creation. And 100 for Keaton's newest team effort. I like the way you put that. Excellent, and congratulations. Well, a virtual cowbell to you, Steve. Thank you so much, Steve McNelly. Appreciate that very, very much. Sparky says the UK took steps to make the riots worse, such as purposely allowing the mobs to assume that the suspect was a Muslim migrant rather than a UK-born Christian, keeping working class fighting with itself.
I mean, honestly, that would not surprise me.
Would not surprise me either. Dodger, in which way is this UK thing alarming? Well, I think we answered that. I think we covered those bases there. Some say, says Sparky, this year's UK riots are no worse than a typical year's football hooligan riots, except the subject is different. Well, they tried to burn down a building with people inside it.
That's considerably worse.
That's bad. Omar Barjovic, thank you for the $5. Good to see Russell calling it football, not soccer. Respect. There we go. Now, please tell me you go for Western Ham Fight Club like Iron Maiden do. Interesting. I don't know if Russell's that big a sports fan. Don't think so.
I really have zero interest in organized sports.
Philip Blair, thanks for the $2. How many 3 little girls unalived in Gaza? Yes, good point. Sparky, thanks for the $10. Some of the UK riots are for other Britain going to shit issues aside from stabbings and immigration, but the establishment trying to put them all under racism to make it seem as if UK's ablaze. Yadira Ramirez, thanks for the $2. Instead, the real wealth for Buckingham Palace. All right. Riot instead, the real wealth for Buckingham Palace. Got it. Sparky, thanks for the $5.
Yeah, now I get you. Yeah, I've always said that. But they did that movie years ago. What was it called? The Queen. That was about the way the royals reacted to the death of Diana. Yeah. And the most shocking thing to me in it was towards the end of the movie. They talk about how I think it was something like 25% of the British public now believe the royal family should be ended. And as an American, I was watching, and they were treating that in the movie like it was a shocking figure. And as an American, I'm watching it, I'm like, that's as bad as it gets?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Like, exactly. I would think normally it would be at least 50%.
Got it pretty good. Sparky, thanks for the $5. Believe it or not, Britain's had a lot worse riots, political and otherwise, in our lifetime without begetting draconian laws. Well, there is an element of opportunism that, that the establishment's going to use this to crack down on speech and take away civil liberties. I'm not arguing with you on that. Bonzo Beans, bon compleanno, signor Dabular. Tante augurit. All right, thank you, Bonzo Beans.
Muchas gracias, senor.
Eric Rousseau, according to 23andMe, I'm 0.7% Ashkenazi Jew, and it's on my Spanish-Mexican mother's side. Do I get the free Israel sex propaganda vacation? I don't know. I think you have to do a little better than that. Although they were going to give it to me, and my mother isn't even Jewish, but I turned it down in principle. Nocturnal Human, I joined 3 hours late. Sorry, Keaton. I'll have to catch everything at work tonight. Great interview also. Still halfway through over the 2-hour interview with Glenn Lowry. Thank you. Yes, we're very proud of how that came out.
Thank you.
Runester314, a search on Twitter for Tommy Robinson will return pics of him in his IDF t-shirt. He's paid by them. Yeah, we don't know who
okay.
Is,
yeah.
Israel's like a prison gang, says Eric Rousseau. Everyone has to put in work in the IDF. Thank you very much. All right. Why don't we... All right, that's our show here. Why don't we plug the Rumble app before we go? How's that? What do you think that? You think we can give our friends a Rumble a plug for their app?
Sure.
I think we could do that.
Sure.
I think that's important. I think
you gotta
that's
play
important.
the schmata rap, though.
The schmata rap, that's right. Make sure to download the Rumble app. Once you download it, search for Do Dissidents and follow our channel directly on the Rumble app. This will make sure that you get a notification every time we go live. So click the link in the description or pinned live chat to download the Rumble app on your phone. It's free. And if you prefer to watch us on the big screen, it's also available on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, Roku, LG, and Samsung TVs. All you need to do is search for Rumble. So you could download the Rumble app now and subscribe to your favorite channels. This way you get notified whenever we go live. And you can put it on your TV now. So you can watch Rumble on the TV. So that is a beautiful thing. So make sure you download the Rumble app. You can scan the QR code on the screen there or click the pinned chat, which should be up there automatically in the Rumble chat.
And as I discovered on the break during the interview, it's also connected to a lot of New Hampshire escort services. So get the Rumble app if you happen to be in this area, or probably even in your own area. It'll just hone right in on those. That is how most of Silicon Valley is funded.
There we go. There we go. You can also check out the Rumble merch store, and that is something you could do as well. Rumble is now selling shirts and schmatas at the literal schmata there. If you want. All right. Let's see. Did we have anything else come in here? Are you saying that routine football hooligan riots don't feature setting buildings on fire with people inside? Asks Sparky. I would suggest that if that were to happen and they did not cover that, that would be a failing of their press.
Like blocking the doors to make sure people don't get out. I'm not going to say there's never been a football riot where a building got burned down, but where the intention was to block people inside the building to make sure they burn to death. I've never heard of such an incident.
Yes. No, neither have I. And if such an incident went unreported, then that is obviously journalistic malpractice on whoever omitted that detail. All right, that is our show, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks to everybody in the Rumble chat, in the YouTube chat. Oh, look at this, 2710 in the Rumble chat, which means that is good for in the year 2525. All righty, folks. Well, wish Russell a very happy birthday tomorrow. Everybody, happy birthday to Russell in the chat.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your trip. We will see you back in New York on Sunday night. That is next time we will be live. So no morning dew this Thursday, but we will be back on Sunday. Russell will be co-hosting with Tusker that night, and then I'll be back for real the following Tuesday. Thank you all very much for being here this afternoon. Appreciate you all very much. Until we see you again, be safe and be well.
I'm going to totally fake it.
There you go.
Please clap.